Welcome, brave souls, to Pennsylvania, land of rolling hills, dense forests, and echoes of history that linger far longer than expected. Beneath the quiet fields and serene landscapes lie ground soaked in blood, suffering, and restless spirits. Tonight, we journey into the 25 haunted battlefields in Pennsylvania, that echo with pain, where the cries of fallen soldiers reverberate through the mist. Shadowy figures march endlessly, and the past refuses to stay buried. These battlefields are more than historical sites, they are haunted theaters of tragedy, where the echoes of war still haunt the living. Gettysburg Battlefield, one of the most storied sites in American history, holds not only the legacy of a decisive Civil War conflict, but also a chilling reputation for paranormal activity. Stretching across rolling fields, dense woods, and open roads, this hallowed ground has been the site of countless reports of ghostly encounters, lingering spirits, and unexplained phenomena that continue to captivate historians, tourists, and paranormal investigators alike. Visitors often speak of the eerie sensation that the past is never fully gone, that the echoes of the battle replay across the fields even more than a century and a half later. From the moment one steps onto the battlefield, an unusual stillness can be felt. The quiet is punctuated only by the rustle of leaves or the distant calls of birds. Yet many visitors report feeling a heavy, almost oppressive energy. Cold drafts appear without explanation, and the wind often seems to carry voices, anguished cries, shouted commands, or the low rumble of cannon fire across the fields. These auditory phenomena have been reported in multiple locations, from Little Round Top to Cemetery Ridge, and are often described as unmistakably human, yet impossible to locate. Shadowy figures are a hallmark of Gettysburg's hauntings. Witnesses frequently describe seeing ghostly soldiers dressed in Civil War uniforms, marching along the ridges or emerging from the tree lines. These figures often appear in groups, seemingly engaged in battle maneuvers, only to vanish when approached or observed closely. Some accounts describe soldiers frozen mid-action, rifles raised, faces twisted in expressions of fear or determination. Others report seeing officers issuing commands, their gestures precise, as if history itself is being played out again and again, trapped in an endless cycle of memory and spirit. Phantom cannon fire is another recurring phenomenon. On quiet nights, visitors have claimed to hear the deep boom of artillery and the crack of musket shots. Even when no one else is present, the sounds sometimes echo across the ridges, unnervingly realistic, accompanied by the metallic clatter of unseen weaponry. Some investigators have noted that the locations of these phantom battles often correspond with historical accounts of troop placements, suggesting that the land itself may somehow retain the memory of the violence that occurred. Alongside these sounds, sudden cold spots frequently appear, brushing against the skin like invisible fingers or gusts of icy air sweeping across open fields. The trees and woods surrounding the battlefield are also a common site of strange activity. Figures sometimes appear to step from behind trunks or move between the shadows of dense foliage. Visitors have reported seeing ghostly cavalry riding through wooded areas, their hooves silent on the forest floor, or glimpsing spectral infantry disappearing among the trees as quickly as they appeared. Some hikers and nighttime observers describe feeling watched, the sensation of unseen eyes tracking their movements, even when no one is in sight. These encounters are often fleeting, yet they leave a lasting impression of the battlefield as a living, breathing site of memory and unrest. Cemetery Ridge, the final position of Union forces during the battle, has its own share of supernatural reports. Many visitors describe seeing spectral formations of soldiers aligned along the ridges, as if guarding the ground where so many perished. Figures kneeling in prayer or tending to fallen comrades have also been reported, along with sudden flickering lights that resemble the torches of campfires or lanterns moving along the crest. Some accounts suggest that the cries of the wounded and dying can be heard most clearly here, carried by the wind in an eerie chorus of pain and sorrow. Several historic landmarks on the battlefield are particularly active. The site of the Pickett S. Charge Memorial often produces sightings of advancing soldiers and ghostly artillery fire. While Little Round Top has been noted for shadowy figures moving along its slopes and phantom officers issuing commands, visitors have described seeing figures freeze in place, sometimes staring directly at them before fading into the night. The interplay of sound, sight, and cold drafts creates a multi-sensory haunting, drawing people into an experience that is both historical and otherworldly. Ghost hunters and paranormal investigators frequently visit Gettysburg, drawn by the multitude of eyewitness reports and the density of unexplained activity. Night tours and historical reenactments often coincide with accounts of heightened paranormal phenomena. Witnesses describe their senses being overwhelmed by the echoes of battle, with visual apparitions, phantom gunfire, and disembodied voices creating an immersive, haunting atmosphere. Some claim that the intensity of these occurrences is strongest at times corresponding to anniversaries of the battle or significant historical events, suggesting a lingering imprint of trauma on the land itself. Despite or perhaps because of the unsettling experiences, Gettysburg Battlefield continues to attract visitors from across the nation and the world. Tourists and history enthusiasts often recount feeling a profound connection to the past, standing on the same ground where thousands of soldiers once fought and died. The reports of ghostly soldiers, unexplained sounds, and shadowy figures add a layer of somber reflection to the historical significance of the site, reminding all who visit that the cost of war extends far beyond the pages of history books. Brandywine Battlefield in Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania, holds a prominent place in American history as the site of a pivotal Revolutionary War conflict. Yet, beyond its historical significance, the battlefield is known for lingering spirits and unexplained phenomena that continue to fascinate both historians and paranormal enthusiasts. Visitors often report feeling an unusual heaviness in the air, a sensation that the events of September 11, 1777, have left an indelible mark on the land. From the moment one steps onto the battlefield, an uncanny stillness pervades the area. The rolling fields and wooded areas, while scenic during the day, often take on a more ominous tone as shadows lengthen and the sun dips toward the horizon. Many visitors describe sudden cold drafts that seem to move across the open fields without explanation. These icy gusts are frequently accompanied by the faint smell of gunpowder or smoke, as if the battle itself has left a lingering residue. Some claim to hear whispers carried by the wind, indistinct murmurs that seem to come from no discernible direction, yet somehow convey urgency, fear, and command. Shadowy figures are a hallmark of Brandywine's paranormal reputation. Witnesses often describe seeing soldiers in Revolutionary War uniforms appearing along tree lines or moving across open fields. These apparitions are sometimes seen advancing in formation, their rifles held ready, while other times they seem frozen mid-action, caught in the throes of battle. Some observers report fleeting glimpses of civilians, women, and children running through the landscape as if trying to escape unseen dangers. These figures often vanish when approached, leaving only a lingering sense of presence and an awareness of the past's unresolved tension. Phantom musket fire is a common experience reported by visitors. Even on quiet nights, the sharp cracks of gunfire, the low rumble of distant cannon, and the clatter of bayonets on wooden floors can be heard. Some have reported these sounds seeming to circle them, moving from one field to another, as if replaying the tactical maneuvers and chaotic skirmishes that took place over 2 centuries ago. The auditory phenomena are often accompanied by sudden drops in temperature, which are interpreted by some as physical manifestations of the battlefield's intense historical energy. The trees and wooded areas around Brandywine are frequently sites of reported activity. Figures are sometimes seen darting between trunks, or glimpsed standing still amidst dense foliage, observing passers-by before disappearing into the shadows. Nighttime visitors often describe a sense of being watched, even when they are alone, as if unseen eyes follow every movement. Some have reported hearing footsteps behind them, only to find nothing when they turn around. Others describe seeing silhouettes of mounted cavalrymen riding through the forest, ghostly steeds moving silently over the ground. Specific landmarks within the battlefield appear to draw heightened paranormal attention. The site of the British advance along the west flank has been noted for apparitions of soldiers advancing with precision, while the open fields near the creek have produced reports of ghostly civilians fleeing through the grass. Many visitors describe seeing flashes of light resembling lanterns bobbing along ridges, moving in ways inconsistent with natural sources. These fleeting illuminations often coincide with reported sounds of battle, creating an immersive sense of history replaying itself. In addition to visual and auditory phenomena, tactile experiences are frequently reported. Some witnesses feel sudden brushes of cold air against their skin, or the sensation of being lightly touched by an unseen hand. Others claim to feel a heavy weight in the chest, an inexplicable pressure that seems to emanate from the ground itself. These sensations, coupled with the eerie sounds and ghostly figures, leave many with the impression that the battlefield is more than a historical site. It is a living repository of memory and emotion, a place where the events of the past continue to echo. Paranormal investigators and historians alike have documented numerous encounters at Brandywine. Night tours and reenactments often coincide with heightened reports of spectral activity. Witnesses have reported seeing apparitions frozen in combat, hearing orders shouted across empty fields, and sensing unseen forces moving through the crowd. Some believe that the land itself retains the trauma and intensity of the battle, preserving it as a lingering energy that manifests under certain conditions. Despite the unnerving experiences, Brandywine Battlefield remains a site of fascination for visitors. Many report a profound sense of connection to history, standing in the same fields where soldiers fought and civilians fled, and feeling the presence of lives that were irrevocably altered on that September day. Standing in the same fields where soldiers fought and civilians fled, and feeling the presence of lives that were irrevocably altered on that September day. The combination of historical significance and paranormal activity makes Brandywine a unique destination, where the past is tangible, not only in the monuments and markers, but also in the inexplicable phenomena reported by those who venture onto the battlefield. Valley Forge, located near King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, is a place steeped in American history and remembered for the harsh winter encampment of George Washington's Continental Army during 1777 to 1778. Yet beyond its historical significance, Valley Forge is also known for unexplained phenomena and lingering spirits said to roam the snow-dusted fields where soldiers endured extreme hardship. Visitors to the site often describe an overwhelming sense of presence, as though the struggles and sacrifices of the past are still palpable in the icy air. It is a place where history seems to overlap with the supernatural, and where the echoes of winter hardships appear to have imprinted themselves upon the land itself. From the moment one steps onto the battlefield and campgrounds, the air carries a palpable weight. Even on warm days, visitors have reported sudden drops in temperature in isolated spots, accompanied by the unmistakable scent of smoke and leather, as though campfires from centuries past still smolder. These cold pockets are often felt near the remains of winter huts or along the paths that would have been main thoroughfares for soldiers. Many describe a chill that goes beyond physical sensation, an almost oppressive presence that suggests unseen watchers moving quietly among the trees and open fields. Ghostly figures are perhaps the most frequently reported phenomena at Valley Forge. Witnesses describe shadowy soldiers trudging across the snow-covered ground, their movements slow and deliberate, as if weighed down by the fatigue and suffering of the harsh winter. Some apparitions are dressed in Continental Army uniforms, complete with muskets and knapsacks, while others appear as vague, misty outlines, their features obscured by the cold air and distance. Observers often report seeing these figures pausing at certain locations, sometimes bending over imaginary fires or tending to unseen duties before disappearing into the mist. Spectral horses and mounted officers have also been reported, particularly near the open fields where cavalry exercises would have taken place. Some visitors claim to see faint forms of horses trotting or standing in formation, their hooves making no sound on the frozen ground. At times, the figures of officers appear to issue orders to troops that cannot be seen, gestures frozen mid-motion, conveying an eerie sense of realism. The combination of mounted specters and trudging infantry creates an immersive experience, as if the winter encampment has momentarily returned in spectral form. Unexplained sounds further enhance the haunted reputation of Valley Forge. Many visitors report hearing faint drumming, as though the rhythmic beat of a distant military drum corps echoes across the fields. Others describe hearing commands shouted in the distance, the urgent tones of officers directing troops who are nowhere in sight. Some report hearing the clink of metal, the loading of muskets, and even the muffled groans of men enduring cold and hunger. These auditory phenomena are often accompanied by sudden gusts of wind, carrying whispered phrases that some interpret as strategy discussions, murmurs of fear, or prayers for survival. Certain locations within the Valley Forge National Historical Park are noted for particularly intense paranormal activity. The reconstructed huts along the encampment line are a frequent source of reported phenomena. Visitors have described lights flickering inside these huts when no sources are present, as well as cold drafts sweeping through the interiors. Some claim to see figures crouched over small fires, tending to imagined duties, only to vanish when approached. The surrounding woods are another hotspot, where figures are glimpsed moving silently between trees, and shadowy shapes occasionally seem to observe passersby before disappearing into the undergrowth. Tactile sensations are commonly reported alongside visual and auditory phenomena. Visitors describe feeling icy hands brush their arms, shoulders, or backs, even when no one else is nearby. Some report the sensation of being lightly pressed or guided along a path, as if unseen soldiers are directing them toward the locations of historical significance. Others experience a heavy weight in the chest or shoulders, an intangible burden that seems to convey the suffering of the men who endured the winter encampment. These experiences leave many with the impression that the land itself is infused with the energy and emotion of those who once lived, worked, and suffered there. Nighttime at Valley Forge intensifies the eerie atmosphere. Some visitors report seeing ghostly lanterns moving along the lines of huts, as if guards are making their rounds. Figures appear and disappear in the tree line, and the faint drumming of distant troops can sometimes be heard, as though the past has temporarily returned to reclaim the present. Even in silence, the weight of history is tangible, with each gust of wind and flicker of light evoking the memory of a harsh winter endured by a young nation struggling to survive. Despite the chilling experiences, Valley Forge remains a site of fascination and reverence. Many visitors report a profound connection to history, feeling that they are witnessing echoes of courage, resilience, and hardship. The combination of historical importance and paranormal activity creates a unique atmosphere, where the lessons of the past are tangible, not only through monuments and markers, but also through the lingering presence of those who lived them. Fort Necessity, located near Farmington, Pennsylvania, stands as a historic reminder of the young George Washington's early military endeavors and one of the first engagements of the French and Indian War. Beyond its historical importance, the site has long been associated with eerie experiences and unexplained phenomena. Visitors report that the battlefields and surrounding woods carry the lingering presence of soldiers long gone, and that the echoes of conflict from centuries past still resonate in the air. Fort Necessity is a place where history and the paranormal seem to converge, and where the weight of past violence is felt in ways both visible and invisible. Approaching the site, visitors often sense a strange shift in the atmosphere. The air seems heavier, and even on calm days, sudden gusts of wind sweep across the fields without warning. These breezes are frequently reported near areas that correspond with the original fortifications or along pathways where soldiers would have marched. Cold spots are common, appearing without explanation, and are often accompanied by a feeling of unease, as if the presence of unseen watchers is close at hand. Many describe an almost palpable tension, a sense that the site itself remembers the chaos of battle and the fear of those who once fought there. Phantom soldiers are among the most frequently reported apparitions at Fort Necessity. Visitors describe seeing figures dressed in mid-date century military attire, often carrying muskets or other period equipment. These figures appear to move in formation or engage in activities consistent with battle preparation. Some are seen standing at attention near fort walls, while others seem to march across the fields, pausing as though awaiting orders from officers who themselves remain unseen. Witnesses sometimes report fleeting glimpses of these soldiers disappearing behind trees or fading into the mist, leaving only the impression of movement where nothing exists. Auditory phenomena are also a key aspect of the hauntings at Fort Necessity. These sounds are often intermittent, appearing at random intervals, and are sometimes accompanied by the faint shouts of officers or soldiers communicating across the battlefield. Whispers and murmurs are common, sometimes carrying indistinct phrases that seem to be commands, warnings, or expressions of fear and pain from those who fought here. Certain locations on the grounds are particularly associated with paranormal activity. The reconstructed fort itself is a frequent site of reported phenomena. Visitors have described doors opening and closing of their own accord, cold drafts sweeping through the small rooms, and shadows flitting along the walls. Some report feeling as though unseen hands brush against their shoulders or arms while walking through the structures, and many feel a sense of being guided or watched. The surrounding fields, where the battle unfolded, are often the site of sightings of ghostly soldiers moving in formation or disappearing into the mist. Sightings are not limited to daytime. At night, the atmosphere of Fort Necessity transforms. Darkness amplifies the eeriness, and some visitors report seeing lights flicker in the distance, resembling lanterns carried by soldiers on patrol. Shadows appear along the edge of the tree line, sometimes moving independently of any natural light source. The sounds of battle, footsteps, and whispered orders are said to intensify after sunset, leaving visitors with the impression that the spirits of the fallen are replaying the conflict under the cover of darkness. Tactile sensations are reported alongside visual and auditory phenomena. Many describe sudden chills or cold spots that appear in open fields, along pathways, or inside the fort. Some feel the touch of invisible hands, sometimes guiding them along the battlefield or prompting them to pause at certain locations. Others report a sensation of weight on their shoulders, as though carrying the emotional and physical burden of soldiers who endured the hardships of battle. These experiences often leave a lasting impression, as if the land itself retains the memory of the conflict and its participants. Even the natural elements seem affected by the haunting. Fog often rolls across the fields in patterns that obscure visibility, and gusts of wind seem to sweep in ways that follow no discernible path. Some visitors report hearing the faint creak of timbers, as though the fort itself is responding to the unseen activity around it. The combination of these environmental factors with the spectral sightings creates a pervasive sense that the past has not entirely left Fort Necessity, and that the events of the early battle continue to influence the present. Despite the unsettling experiences, Fort Necessity remains a place of fascination for history enthusiasts and paranormal investigators alike. The reported phenomena offer a direct sensory connection to the lives of those who participated in one of the early conflicts of the French and Indian War. Visitors leave with the sense that they have not only witnessed history in its preserved form, but have also glimpsed the lingering echoes of lives lived and struggles endured centuries ago. Paoli Battlefield, located near Malvern, Pennsylvania, is a site etched deeply into American Revolutionary War history. Infamous for the brutal Paoli Massacre of 1777, on a dark September night, British troops launched a surprise attack on General Anthony Wayne's Continental Army, resulting in the deaths of dozens of American soldiers in a swift and merciless assault. Today, the battlefield is more than a historical landmark. It is a place where the echoes of violence and despair seem to linger, leaving many visitors with experiences that defy explanation. Those who walk these fields often report a chilling atmosphere, as if the past has never truly left, and the restless spirits of the slain soldiers continue to inhabit the landscape. Approaching the battlefield, visitors frequently describe a sudden shift in the air. Even on calm days, gusts of wind sweep unpredictably across the fields, sometimes carrying faint sounds of movement or muffled cries. Some people report a sense of heaviness underfoot, as if the soil itself bears the weight of past horrors. The energy of the massacre appears to cling to certain spots, especially near areas corresponding to historical troop positions, ambush points, and the woods from which the attack originated. Many who have visited describe an oppressive feeling, a tangible sorrow that seems to seep from the earth and into the bones of anyone who pauses to reflect on the events of that fateful night. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at Paoli battlefield is the appearance of shadowy figures. Witnesses describe humanoid shapes gliding across the fields, sometimes moving in formation, sometimes appearing individually. These spectral soldiers are often glimpsed in the dim light of dawn or dusk, their outlines flickering like images in a faulty lantern. Some observers claim to see the glint of bayonets or the flash of weapons in the moonlight, as though the final moments of the massacre are replaying in a ghostly loop. Figures have been reported climbing over low stone walls or moving silently through the tree line, vanishing when approached, leaving an empty field behind but a lingering sense of watchfulness. Many visitors report hearing screams, shouts, or the muffled commands of officers when no one else is present. Some claim to hear the clatter of bayonets striking and the heavy thud of bodies falling, often accompanied by the distant sound of running footsteps or the shuffle of soldiers in formation. Whispers are another common occurrence. Words spoken in hurried tones, sometimes unintelligible, seem to emanate from the grass and trees themselves. On particularly still nights, the cries of anguish and the echo of orders give the impression that the battlefield is not empty, but occupied by those trapped in the trauma of their final moments. Certain areas of the field are especially associated with paranormal activity. The woods bordering the main clearing, where much of the ambush occurred, are often the site of intense experiences. Visitors report shadows darting between trees, sudden drops in temperature, and eerie sensations of being followed. The open fields also host unexplained sounds, including the creaking of imaginary timbers or the metallic ring of weapons striking unseen objects. Some individuals describe a feeling of pressure on their shoulders, as if invisible hands are urging them forward or reminding them of the countless soldiers who fell during the assault. At night, the haunting intensifies. Moonlight casts long shadows that seem to shift independently, and the silence of the modern landscape contrasts sharply with the auditory echoes reported by witnesses. Many people claim to see figures pause under the trees, kneel in apparent prayer, or stand still in frozen tableau, as though caught between life and death. Flickering lights, sometimes resembling lanterns or torches, appear in the distance, illuminating small portions of the field for moments before vanishing entirely. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile experiences leaves a strong impression, suggesting that the events of the Paoli massacre continue to resonate across time. Some visitors have described physical sensations accompanying the paranormal activity. Cold spots often appear in specific areas, even on warm days, and gusts of wind may brush along the neck or shoulders with no discernible source. Several have reported feeling as though invisible hands press against them or guide their movements across the field. Others recount a pervasive heaviness, as though the energy of suffering is not confined to memory, but is instead embedded in the soil, carrying the weight of sorrow and fear from centuries past. The natural elements also seem to respond to the haunting. Fog frequently rolls in from low-lying areas, obscuring parts of the field and creating a dreamlike, unsettling atmosphere. Trees sway unexpectedly in the stillness, and shadows appear to move independently of moonlight or ambient light. Some witnesses claim that the environment itself amplifies the presence of the spirits, as if the land has absorbed the terror of that night and continues to communicate it to those who walk there. Despite its grim reputation, Paoli battlefield draws historians, paranormal enthusiasts, and curious visitors alike. Many are drawn by the desire to connect with history firsthand, while others seek the thrill of encountering the unexplained. Across the field, the stories are consistent: shadowy figures, spectral flashes of weapons, cold spots, and anguished whispers. Each account underscores the sense that the massacre left an indelible mark, one that continues to affect the living as it preserves the memory of those who perished. Brandywine Creek, flowing gently through the rolling hills of Chester County, Pennsylvania, is a site steeped in history and shadowed by tales of unrest. Its waters and surrounding woods are not just scenic landmarks. They are silent witnesses to the fierce battles of the American Revolutionary War, particularly the Battle of Brandywine in September 1777. That clash saw the Continental Army clash with British forces in a struggle that would leave many dead or wounded, and it is here, along the creek and along its banks, that visitors continue to report experiences that defy explanation. Accounts of ghostly figures, spectral movements across the water, and inexplicable sounds make Brandywine Creek a place where history and the paranormal intertwine. Those who approach the creek often describe an immediate shift in atmosphere. Even on warm, sunny days, sudden gusts of cold wind sweep along the banks, chilling the skin as if the spirits of fallen soldiers are passing unseen. Some visitors report feeling an oppressive heaviness in the air, a subtle weight that presses upon the shoulders and lingers in the chest. The ground itself seems imbued with the memory of the conflict, the soil saturated with centuries of sorrow and bloodshed. And this energy is said to manifest in eerie sensations that many cannot ignore. Perhaps the most striking accounts involve spectral soldiers. Witnesses describe shadowy figures crossing the creek in the early morning mist or at dusk, their movements deliberate and soldierly, as though continuing drills or maneuvers long after death. Some report glimpsing flashes of 18th century uniforms, weapons in hand, or fleeting reflections of bayonets glinting in the low light. These apparitions often appear for mere moments, vanishing as observers approach, leaving the water calm once more but leaving a lingering sense that the past is watching. The interplay of fog, moonlight, and the rippling creek adds to the disorientation, creating scenes that feel at once real and dreamlike. Auditory phenomena are also a hallmark of Brandywine Creek. Many visitors report hearing muffled footsteps along the banks or across the water, even when no one else is present. Ghostly cries and murmurs echo from the trees, sometimes forming brief, coherent words, other times fading into the wind as unintelligible whispers. The sounds of musket fire or the clang of metal striking metal have been reported, particularly during quiet evenings, creating the sensation that the battle is playing out invisibly, just beyond the reach of the living. Some have even described hearing distant commands shouted by officers, or the panicked cries of soldiers calling for comrades lost in the chaos, as though the very air carries the weight of those final moments. Cold spots and sudden chills are commonly reported, often in areas where the creek curves sharply or where trees crowd close to the water. Visitors describe the temperature dropping inexplicably, their breath visible in the air, even on mild days. Some report feeling unseen hands brush past them, tug at clothing, or even press lightly on shoulders. Sensations that are fleeting but unmistakably real. Others experience a heaviness that seems to guide them along certain paths or deter them from others. A subtle suggestion that the spirits are present and aware of human movement through their territory. The natural surroundings of Brandywine Creek amplify these experiences. Fog often rolls in unexpectedly, blanketing sections of the water and banks in an ethereal white. Shadows among the trees flicker and shift, sometimes appearing to take on human or military forms. The combination of dim light, moving mist, and the reflective water creates illusions that are difficult to distinguish from genuine apparitions. Yet many accounts are consistent enough to suggest more than mere imagination. Even wildlife behaves strangely. Birds often fall silent in areas where spectral activity is reported, and deer or other animals are said to startle inexplicably, as if sensing an unseen presence. Some visitors have reported experiencing visions of past events. While standing along the banks, individuals describe seeing skirmishes unfold before their eyes, soldiers falling or regrouping, and officers issuing orders. These visions are often accompanied by intense feelings of fear, sorrow, or urgency, as though the emotional residue of the battle has imprinted itself upon the land. Witnesses have reported crying or feeling a sudden empathy for the soldiers, both Continental and British, whose lives were cut short or irrevocably altered on these grounds. Nightfall brings heightened activity along Brandywine Creek. The darkness seems to make the air thicker, the shadows longer, and the sounds more distinct. Ghostly lights have been observed floating among the trees or dancing across the water, sometimes stationary, other times moving slowly along the creek's edge. Some describe seeing figures pause, kneel, or perform actions reminiscent of past soldiers tending to the wounded or securing positions. The interplay of light and darkness creates an environment where the boundary between reality and memory feels tenuous, leaving a lasting impression on anyone who witnesses such phenomena. Despite its unsettling reputation, Brandywine Creek continues to draw historians, paranormal enthusiasts, and curious travelers. Many are drawn by the desire to connect with history firsthand, while others seek to encounter the unexplained. Across the creek and surrounding fields, stories converge, shadowy figures crossing water, eerie cries, cold gusts, and the ever-present feeling of being watched. Each account reinforces the sense that the events of the battle have left an enduring mark, one that continues to manifest in ghostly form for centuries afterward. Fort Mifflin, perched along the banks of the Delaware River in Philadelphia, is more than a relic of the Revolutionary War. It is a place where history lingers palpably, and where the echoes of conflict seem to bleed into the present. Built as a defensive stronghold to protect Philadelphia from British forces, the fort saw brutal battles and endured relentless bombardment. The men who fought and, in many cases, died within its walls appear not to have left entirely. Visitors consistently report experiences that defy ordinary explanation. From ghostly soldiers pacing the ramparts to the distant boom of phantom cannon fire. As one approaches Fort Mifflin, even on a calm day, a sense of isolation and unease pervades. The fort sits largely abandoned, its crumbling brickwork and rusted cannons standing as silent witnesses to its violent past. Yet some visitors describe a feeling of presence, as if unseen eyes follow their every step. Cold drafts seem to sweep across the grounds without cause, and the heavy air carries the faint scent of gunpowder and smoke, lingering long after daylight fades. Many recount the sensation of walking through a space that is both historical and haunted, where time itself seems suspended. Shadowy figures are the most commonly reported phenomenon. On the ramparts and along the walls, witnesses describe ghostly soldiers dressed in 18th century uniforms, marching or patrolling as though the fort were still under siege. These apparitions are often fleeting, appearing for moments before vanishing when approached, yet the impression they leave is vivid. Some visitors have reported seeing soldiers crouched behind cannons, scanning the river, or gesturing to unseen comrades. In certain areas, figures seem to reenact past battles, moving in coordinated formations, their actions eerily precise despite the lack of any living participants. Auditory experiences are equally striking. Many report hearing the distant boom of cannon fire, the rattle of musket shots, or the shouts of officers issuing orders, even when the fort is completely empty. These sounds often appear during quiet evenings or pre-dawn hours, when ambient noise is minimal, creating a chilling effect. Some visitors describe anguished cries echoing through the barracks or the long hallways, as if the suffering of the soldiers has imprinted itself on the very walls. These cries can be sudden and intense, or faint whispers that vanish as quickly as they arrive, leaving an uneasy silence in their wake. The fort's abandoned buildings contribute to the unsettling atmosphere. Rooms once used for storage, lodging, or command are now empty. Yet many visitors report feeling an unseen presence. Doors slam without wind, and steps echo where no one walks. Some have seen shadowy forms peering from windows, moving along corridors, or vanishing into the walls. The weight of history is tangible. Guests often feel as though they are intruding on a space where the living and the dead coexist, where past and present are intertwined in an uneasy truce. Certain locations within Fort Mifflin appear to be hotspots of activity. The outer walls and river-facing ramparts are the most frequently mentioned, where ghostly figures are seen guarding the fort or patrolling as if defending it from an invisible enemy. Visitors have reported seeing soldiers kneeling beside cannons, aiming at phantoms across the river, or moving in formation along the parapets. Inside the fort, barracks and storage areas often produce sudden cold spots, footsteps on wooden floors, or fleeting glimpses of figures moving through empty rooms. These phenomena are not confined to a single area. Rather, the fort as a whole seems permeated by the presence of those who fought and died there. Night amplifies the haunting. The fort's darkened hallways and ramparts take on a more sinister quality. Shadows stretching unnaturally and lights flickering despite the absence of electrical sources. Some visitors have reported spectral reenactments occurring under the cover of darkness, figures moving in battle formations, or soldiers running between walls as though under attack. Cold drafts and physical sensations are commonly reported by those exploring Fort Mifflin. Visitors often describe a sudden chill as they enter certain rooms or approach specific areas of the ramparts. Some claim to feel invisible hands brushing against them, a gentle nudge, or the sensation of being guided along particular paths. These encounters are fleeting yet undeniable, leaving many with an acute awareness of a presence that is both watchful and interactive. The fort's energy appears to respond to movement, almost as if the spirits remain vigilant, continuing their defensive duties even in the absence of living adversaries. Eyewitness accounts often converge around a sense of repetition. Many describe witnessing events that seem to replay the fort's past battles. Soldiers appear in combat stances, muskets raised, or rallying fellow phantoms. The cries of the wounded, the thunder of artillery, and the commands of officers all create a tapestry of sound and motion that evokes the chaos and intensity of the Revolutionary War. While these occurrences are brief and often fragmented, they leave a lasting impression on visitors, making it difficult to separate the echoes of history from the spectral presence that inhabits the fort today. Despite the eerie experiences, Fort Mifflin remains a place of fascination for historians, paranormal enthusiasts, and curious travelers alike. Its combination of historical significance and supernatural reputation draws visitors seeking both education and encounters with the unexplained. Across the fort, stories converge: shadowy soldiers on the ramparts, phantom musket fire, anguished cries, and sudden chills, all reinforcing the sense that the fort is a liminal space where the past refuses to rest. Red Bank Battlefield, straddling the border of New Jersey and Pennsylvania, is a site steeped in Revolutionary War history and whispered hauntings. Known for the fierce battle fought in October 1777, when American patriots clashed with Hessian mercenaries, the battlefield has long been a place where history and the supernatural intertwine. Visitors today often recount experiences that suggest the spirits of the fallen have not entirely left the grounds. Phantom musket fire, ghostly soldiers marching silently, and echoes of anguished cries are common reports. Many who wander the fields at dusk claim to see fleeting shadows moving across the terrain, as if the fallen men are still walking in solemn parade, bound to the soil where they gave their lives. Approaching Red Bank Battlefield, one notices the quiet stillness that seems at odds with the chaos that once engulfed the area. Even on a bright day, there is a sense of solemnity, an invisible weight in the air that presses on visitors. Some describe sudden chills that descend upon them without warning, particularly near the riverbanks where many of the Hessian forces landed. Cold gusts appear with no breeze to explain them, and the rustle of leaves or distant water often carries the faint impression of movement, footsteps that vanish when investigated. The battlefield seems alive with memory, every hillock and trench holding the resonance of the past. Shadowy figures are among the most frequently reported phenomena on the grassy fields and near remnants of fortifications. Visitors describe seeing soldiers in full 18th century uniform, marching or patrolling in formation. These apparitions often appear at dusk or during the early morning hours, moving with a precision that hints at military discipline even in death. Some witnesses have reported seeing men kneeling over fallen comrades, while others recount entire units silently advancing, muskets raised, only to vanish when approached. These fleeting glimpses are sometimes accompanied by the smell of gunpowder or the faint metallic temps of blood, sensations that deepen the eerie authenticity of the encounters. Auditory experiences at Red Bank are equally haunting. Many report the unmistakable sound of musket fire echoing across the fields, even when no reenactments are taking place. These phantom volleys are sometimes isolated shots, sometimes the rapid staccato of a full engagement. Accompanying these sounds are the cries of soldiers, moans of the wounded, and orders barked in voices that vanish as soon as attention is drawn. Whispered commands and frantic communications are said to float through the air, carried on the wind in a way that seems to defy natural explanation. Visitors often describe their hearts racing at these moments, unsure whether they are hearing echoes of history or the presence of restless spirits. The battlefield's terrain itself seems to play a role in the hauntings. Low-lying areas near the river, embankments, and old fortification sites are particularly active. Witnesses report sudden chills and cold spots in these locations, as though the earth itself remembers the trauma that occurred there. Shadows sometimes move independently of sunlight, stretching unnaturally across the grass or flitting along tree lines. People walking the fields have described feeling the sensation of being followed, the weight of invisible eyes tracking them as they explore. In some cases, visitors have claimed to feel brief touches or nudges, as though a spectral hand guides or warns them along the battlefield. The phenomenon is not limited to solitary experiences. Groups exploring the battlefield have reported simultaneous occurrences, where multiple individuals see shadowy figures moving across the fields, hear the same phantom gunfire, or feel a sudden chill in unison. Some witnesses describe a growing intensity of activity at dusk, when long shadows stretch across the battlefield and the fading light creates an atmosphere that is at once beautiful and unsettling. In these moments, the past seems to press forward, a reminder that Red Bank was a place of bloodshed and bravery, where lives were lost in the struggle for freedom. Eyewitness accounts often speak of repetition, the sense that the events of that October day in 1777 replay themselves in fragments. Soldiers appear in familiar military patterns, marching across the field, firing their muskets, or tending to comrades. Occasionally, visitors have reported seeing officers gesturing orders, pointing to strategic points along the battlefield, or rallying men who vanish before anyone can respond. The combination of sight, sound, and sensation can be overwhelming, creating a profound awareness of the battlefield's violent history and the lingering presence of those who fought and died there. Red Bank Battlefield also carries stories of more subtle phenomena. Some visitors have reported hearing whispered conversations in German or English, as though Hessian and American soldiers are communicating across the centuries. Others describe faint musical tones or drumming, perhaps echoing military signals or the heartbeat of an army long gone. Despite the unsettling activity, Red Bank Battlefield continues to draw historians, paranormal enthusiasts, and curious travelers. Its dual identity as a site of historical significance and supernatural intrigue makes it compelling. Across the fields, along embankments, and near the water's edge, stories converge. Shadowy soldiers marching silently, phantom musket fire, anguished cries, sudden chills, and fleeting touches. Visitors leave with more than knowledge of the 1777 engagement. They carry with them a sense of a living past, one that refuses to stay buried. Germantown Battlefield, located just outside Philadelphia, is a site steeped in both Revolutionary War history and chilling tales of paranormal activity. The battlefield, the site of a fierce 1777 engagement between American forces under General George Washington and the British Army, continues to draw visitors, intrigued not only by its historical significance, but also by the mysterious occurrences that have been reported over the centuries. Witnesses have described ghostly figures clad in 18th-century military uniforms, marching silently across the fields, as if the battle is perpetually replaying itself. The presence of these spectral soldiers seems to linger, particularly at dawn and dusk, when the light casts long shadows across the terrain, creating an atmosphere that feels suspended between the past and present. As visitors approach Germantown Battlefield, there is often an immediate sense of unease. Even on calm, Sunny days, sudden cold gusts of wind, seem to come from nowhere, brushing against skin and chilling the bones. Many attribute these sudden chills to residual energy left behind by the soldiers who fell here, their lives cut short by musket balls and cannon fire. Some people have reported feeling as though invisible eyes are watching them as they walk the grassy fields, and a few claim to have felt phantom touches along the shoulders or arms, fleeting yet unmistakable, as if the spirits are reaching out to make their presence known. The most commonly reported phenomena are visual apparitions. Shadowy figures are seen marching in formation across the open fields, often disappearing when approached. Visitors describe glimpses of soldiers crouching behind fallen logs or making their way toward unseen objectives, their movements precise yet ghostly. In some instances, entire units have been reported moving silently across the battlefield, muskets in hand, giving the impression that the engagement is frozen in time, yet continuously replaying itself. Some witnesses have seen officers issuing commands or gesturing to troops, only for the figures to dissolve into thin air before anyone can get close. These spectral manifestations are sometimes accompanied by faintly visible flags or banners, fluttering in the breeze without any physical support, adding to the eerie authenticity of the visions. Auditory experiences at Germantown are equally unnerving. Many visitors have reported hearing the sounds of battle that seem to emanate from nowhere. The sharp crack of musket fire, the deep roar of cannon blasts, and the anguished cries of soldiers echoing through the trees. These sounds often appear in isolation, sometimes moments after the battlefield has fallen silent, creating a disorienting juxtaposition of past and present. Some witnesses claim to hear orders shouted in English or German, calls for retreat or advance that carry with them the weight of panic and desperation. Others report more subtle auditory phenomena, like the clatter of armor, the shuffle of boots on grass, or the soft creaking of wagons moving unseen along the edge of the field. In addition to visual and auditory experiences, many people describe feeling physical manifestations. Cold spots often appear in isolated areas, particularly near the remnants of earthworks and trenches, causing visitors to shiver even on warm days. These areas are sometimes accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature or an inexplicable heaviness in the air. Sensations that seem to anchor the paranormal activity to specific points on the battlefield. Some visitors have reported a tangible feeling of presence beside them or just behind them, only to turn and see nothing, reinforcing the sensation that the battlefield is alive with lingering spirits. In rare instances, objects left unattended, such as water bottles or backpacks, have reportedly been nudged or shifted. Though no natural cause is evident, witnesses describe hearing phantom footsteps moving through the underbrush, accompanied by the distant murmur of voices that vanish when approached. Some have reported fleeting shadows darting between trees, almost like soldiers advancing or retreating under cover. The combination of open fields and forested perimeters creates a sense of unpredictability, where apparitions can emerge anywhere, blending seamlessly with the natural landscape while maintaining an unmistakable otherworldly presence. Groups visiting Germantown battlefield sometimes experience collective phenomena. Multiple people may witness the same shadowy figure or hear identical sounds simultaneously. These shared experiences suggest that the hauntings are not purely subjective, lending credence to the idea that the battlefield holds residual energy from its violent past. In particular, dusk has been cited as a time of heightened activity, when fading light and stretching shadows enhance the spectral presence, and the atmosphere seems thick with memory and echoes of the fallen. Many visitors report that these experiences leave a lasting impression. Walking the battlefield after such encounters, people often feel a mixture of awe and melancholy, acutely aware of the sacrifices made on this ground. The spectral soldiers, ghostly cannon fire, and sudden chills serve as a reminder that Germantown was a site of courage, fear, and profound loss. The landscape itself seems to hold the imprint of these emotions, and the battlefield continues to act as a conduit between the living and the dead, preserving the memory of those who fought and died here. Fort Washington Battlefield, located along the banks of the Delaware River, remains a chilling reminder of the Revolutionary War and the fierce clashes that took place in December 1776. Known for its strategic importance during the conflict, the site has since become a magnet for history enthusiasts and those drawn to its lingering paranormal energy. Visitors often speak of an overwhelming atmosphere that feels both heavy and suffocating, as though the land itself remembers the anguish and desperation of the soldiers who once defended it. Ghostly sightings, phantom sounds, and unexplained phenomena have been reported for decades, making Fort Washington one of the most intriguing and unsettling battlefields in America. Many who walk the battlefield describe seeing shadowy figures pacing along the ridges and earthworks where troops once stood. These apparitions often appear as indistinct forms, silhouetted against the winter sky or the rolling hills of the ridgeline. Some witnesses report seeing soldiers in full 18th century uniforms, muskets slung across their shoulders, marching in formation or crouching as if taking cover from invisible fire. These spectral figures are often fleeting. As observers approach, they vanish into thin air or dissolve into the mist that frequently settles over the site. The phenomenon is particularly pronounced at dawn and dusk, when long shadows and low light seem to merge the living world with echoes of the past. Alongside these visual experiences, auditory phenomena are widely reported. Visitors have heard phantom gunfire, the crack of muskets, and the deep thud of cannon blasts resonating across the battlefield, even on quiet days. These sounds are often intermittent, appearing without warning and fading just as suddenly. In addition to the roar of battle, some have reported hearing the anguished cries and shouts of soldiers, whispers of commands, or the distant rattle of bayonets clashing. On more than one occasion, groups of visitors have described hearing these sounds simultaneously, as if the echoes of the 1776 skirmish are replaying for anyone willing to listen. Physical sensations often accompany the visual and auditory experiences. Sudden cold gusts sweep across the open fields, chilling even those dressed for winter weather. Many describe a heavy, oppressive atmosphere, a sense of being watched or followed, and an unexplainable pressure in the chest when standing near certain points of the battlefield. Some have reported feeling invisible hands brushing their arms or shoulders, fleeting touches that disappear as quickly as they occur. These sensations are often most intense near the historic earthworks, trenches, and ridges where the fiercest fighting took place, suggesting a strong connection between the land and the lingering spirits of soldiers who fell there. Shadows seem to move independently of the natural light, darting between trees, rolling hills, and abandoned fortifications. Witnesses have described seeing shapes crouching behind rocks or along the ridges, as if seeking cover from an unseen enemy. On multiple occasions, visitors report spotting full formations of soldiers, appearing as if frozen mid-battle, before dissolving when approached. Some even claim to see spectral officers gesturing to troops, issuing commands, or signaling retreats. The phantom motions eerily precise, yet impossible to fully capture or record. These visual anomalies often leave observers both awed and unnerved, creating a tangible sense that the battlefield is alive with echoes of the past. The trees and wooded edges surrounding Fort Washington also seem to harbor paranormal activity. Phantom footsteps are frequently heard moving through underbrush and along hidden paths. Whispered conversations, orders, or cries of distress sometimes float from these areas, vanishing when anyone attempts to pinpoint the source. Fog often rises from the low-lying areas, giving the impression that the battlefield is shrouded in an eternal mist that hides both history and ghostly replays. On especially quiet days, the silence itself becomes unsettling, as if the absence of sound is another form of spectral presence, waiting for the living to notice. Groups exploring the battlefield occasionally report collective experiences. Multiple people may witness the same shadowy figure, hear identical gunfire or cannon blasts, or feel simultaneous cold spots in specific areas. These shared phenomena suggest that the hauntings are not merely individual perceptions, but instead a persistent, observable presence linked to the site's violent history. Many paranormal researchers and historians have noted that activity tends to increase during early mornings, late afternoons, or on overcast, windy days, when environmental conditions seem to enhance the sensations of time folding upon itself. Visitors often leave Fort Washington with more than a historical understanding of the battle. The combination of visual, auditory, and physical phenomena leaves a profound impression, connecting the living to the soldiers who endured fear, hunger, and death in December of 1776. Phantom figures, ghostly gunfire, and sudden cold spots are more than mere curiosities. They serve as reminders of the human cost of war and the lasting emotional energy left on a battlefield soaked in blood, sacrifice, and courage. Tippecanoe Battlefield is a name most often associated with Indiana, with the 1811 clash between U.S. forces led by Governor William Henry Harrison and Native American warriors under Tecumseh's brother, Tenskwatawa, shaped the early course of the nation's westward expansion. These Pennsylvania battle sites, often overshadowed by their Midwestern counterpart, are steeped in echoes of conflict, fear, and unresolved tension, leaving visitors with accounts of unexplained phenomena that have persisted for centuries. The Pennsylvania skirmishes were part of the larger unrest that swept the Northwest Territory and the Upper Ohio Valley in the early 19th century. While not officially chronicled with the same detail as the Indiana confrontation, letters, militia reports, and settler accounts describe sudden raids, ambushes, and clashes with native forces loyal to Tecumseh's Confederacy. These engagements, though brief, were intense and bloody. Families living near the frontier often witnessed the aftermath: abandoned encampments, blood-stained fields, and hastily buried bodies. It was on these lands that the first stories of lingering spirits began to take root, passed down in hushed tones through local folklore. Visitors to the Pennsylvania sites today often describe a profound sense of being watched. Trees that once lined the edges of open fields now cast long shadows across the worn paths, and some say the air itself seems heavier, as if charged with memory. Hikers and history enthusiasts have reported sudden drops in temperature in otherwise calm weather, and an inexplicable chill that follows them across the battlefield. These chills are frequently accompanied by a sense of unease, as though unseen eyes are tracking every movement. Local lore attributes these sensations to soldiers who never left the land in peace, bound instead to the battlefield by the violence of their final moments. Shadowy figures are the most commonly reported manifestation. Witnesses describe dark silhouettes moving among the trees or across the open fields, often appearing and vanishing without warning. Some have seen groups of figures in formation, as if preparing for battle, only to disappear when approached. One hiker reported seeing a lone figure, dressed in the uniform of a militia soldier, walking along a ridgeline before fading into the morning mist. Others claim to hear the unmistakable sounds of conflict-distant gunfire, the clash of steel, and cries of "command us," by the absence of any modern disturbance. These auditory apparitions are frequently described as sudden and startling, fading as quickly as they appear, leaving only the echo in memory. Even more unsettling are the reports of interactions with the spirits. Visitors recount brief touches, as if someone brushed past them, or the feeling of a presence directly behind them when no one is there. Some have described objects being moved or disturbed, a fallen branch mysteriously uprighted, a bag knocked off a bench, or the sense of footsteps on a path where no one is walking. One local historian, who spends much of his time researching the battlefield, has shared stories of his equipment inexplicably malfunctioning or his notes being shifted, attributing these occurrences to restless spirits attempting to communicate their lingering unrest. The land itself bears evidence of its violent past. Scars in the terrain mark the movement of troops and the positions of skirmishes. Old fortifications, barely discernible now, suggest hurried defensive measures taken in the heat of conflict. In some areas, visitors find remnants of bullets and musket balls, artifacts that serve as physical reminders of the lives lost. These tangible relics, combined with the persistent reports of paranormal activity, create an environment that feels suspended between past and present. a place where history is not merely remembered but actively present. Several local families claim generational experiences with the spirits. Stories of grandparents or great-grandparents who heard ghostly commands in the dead of night, or children who ran screaming from cold spots in the fields, persist in oral history. One family recalls a boy who disappeared for a few hours during a visit to the site, only to reappear, claiming he had been following a line of soldiers marching silently across the field. Such accounts, while anecdotal, reinforce the perception that the battlefield is more than just a historical site. It is a place of living memory, haunted by the intensity of its own past. Researchers and paranormal investigators have visited the Pennsylvania Tippecanoe sites over the years, using modern equipment to capture what cannot be explained by conventional means. AVP sessions often pick up faint commands, shouts, or whispers, sometimes in languages or dialects of the early 19th century. Temperature sensors frequently record sudden drops in localized areas, and motion detectors occasionally register movement with no physical source. While skeptics argue that these phenomena can be explained by natural causes, the shifting of air currents, the settling of soil, or the power of suggestion, those who have spent extensive time on the battlefield attest to the undeniable sense that the land itself is imbued with the echoes of the past. Despite its unsettling reputation, the Pennsylvania side of Tippecanoe battlefield draws visitors not just for the thrill of the paranormal, but for its historical significance. Walking the fields, one gains a visceral sense of the human cost of early American expansion and the resistance of native peoples defending their lands. The eerie experiences reported by visitors, whether understood as ghostly manifestations or the psychological residue of violence, serve as a reminder that history is never entirely past. The spirits of those who fought, suffered, and died here seem determined to ensure that their stories are not forgotten. Even as the sun sets and the shadows lengthen, the battlefield continues to hold its silent vigil. The air thickens with anticipation, the past pressing against the present, and the faint echoes of gunfire and shouted commands drift across the fields. Visitors often leave with a mixture of awe and unease, carrying with them the impression that the Pennsylvania skirmishes of Tippecanoe, though small in scale, left a mark far larger than the records suggest. The battlefield is a place where memory and history converge, and the lingering spirits ensure that the stories of courage, conflict, and loss continue to resonate through the ages. In the end, Tippecanoe battlefield on the Pennsylvania side is not merely a location of historical curiosity, it is a testament to the enduring presence of the past. Shadowy soldiers, phantom battle cries, and sudden chills are reminders that some conflicts leave marks that neither time nor memory can erase. For those willing to listen, the whispers of the fallen still speak, telling their stories to anyone who treads carefully across the hallowed, haunted ground. Paxton's Field, located just outside Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, is a site that few casual visitors know holds such a dark and haunting history. The field itself appears unremarkable at first glance: stretches of open grass, clusters of trees along its borders, and the occasional farm path winding across its expanse. Yet those who step onto this ground quickly discover that it is anything but ordinary. For centuries, whispers have lingered among locals about the spirits that haunt the field, and modern visitors continue to report experiences that defy explanation. The historical origins of Paxton's Field date back to the late 18th and early 19th centuries, a time when skirmishes between local militias, settlers, and occasionally marauding bands of enemy combatants occurred across Pennsylvania's frontier. Though records are scarce, contemporary accounts suggest that the field was the scene of multiple violent encounters, some as simple as small militia drills turned deadly, others as tragic as ambushes that left men and boys lying in the grass, their cries unheard beyond the immediate area. Over time, the field became a repository of suffering, and local folklore began to weave tales of restless spirits wandering among the trees and open grass. Modern-day visitors to Paxton's Field often report an immediate shift in atmosphere upon entering the site. Many described an inexplicable heaviness in the air, a tension that seems to cling to the skin and press against the chest. The open fields, so calm and serene in daylight, are often punctuated by sudden cold drafts that appear without warning. Hikers and history enthusiasts have recounted feeling unseen hands brush against their arms or shoulders, gentle yet insistent, as if the field itself is attempting to reach out and make contact. These touches, coupled with an eerie sense of being watched, create an experience that is both unnerving and mesmerizing. Sightings of ghostly figures are among the most frequently reported phenomena. Visitors describe fleeting glimpses of men dressed in military uniforms from various periods, some appearing to march across the grass, others standing motionless as though surveying the land. These apparitions are often described as indistinct, shadows more than fully formed figures, yet the impression of presence is unmistakable. One visitor recounted seeing a young soldier kneeling beside a tree, seemingly tending to a fallen comrade, only to vanish when approached. Another claimed to have watched a formation of ghostly troops cross the field, their faces hidden beneath faded hats, disappearing into thin air as quickly as they appeared. Auditory experiences are equally chilling. Witnesses frequently report hearing cries for help, the anguished shouts of men caught in combat long past. The sounds often emerge suddenly, cutting through the natural quiet of the field, only to disappear moments later, leaving visitors questioning whether they imagined them. Some have described hearing the clatter of distant muskets or the clash of swords, as though echoes of past battles are being replayed for those sensitive enough to perceive them. These sounds, combined with the visual manifestations, create a multi-sensory impression of history refusing to stay buried. The land itself seems to carry memory. Visitors have noted subtle changes in terrain, areas where the grass appears flattened or worn despite no obvious foot traffic. These depressions, though often dismissed as natural, contribute to the feeling that the field is alive with traces of its violent past. Small artifacts occasionally surface, fragments of metal, rusted buttons, or the remains of old ammunition, offering tangible links to the battles that once occurred here. It is as if the soil itself remembers, preserving a connection to those who died and refused to move on. Local residents have long been aware of the field's reputation, and generational stories abound. Elders speak of children who wandered too far into the field and returned pale, speaking of shadowy figures that followed them and whispering voices calling their names. Farmers recount equipment malfunctioning inexplicably when passing through certain areas, and visitors often describe compasses spinning wildly or cameras failing to function without apparent reason. These accounts, while anecdotal, lend a weight of credibility to the idea that Paxton's Field is more than just a historical curiosity. It is a place of active, lingering presence. Paranormal investigators have explored Paxton's Field over the years, often finding that the site responds in ways that defy conventional explanation. Electronic devices pick up sudden energy spikes, temperature readings drop dramatically in small localized areas, and attempts at recording sound frequently capture faint murmurs, cries, or commands. Investigators report that even seasoned professionals feel a distinct sense of unease upon entering the field, as though the very atmosphere is charged with unrest. While skeptics argue that natural explanations such as wind, terrain, or psychological suggestion can account for some experiences, those who spend extended time in the field often attest that the sensations and sightings are unmistakably supernatural. Despite, or perhaps because of its reputation, Paxton's Field continues to draw visitors. History enthusiasts, paranormal investigators, and curious travelers come to walk the paths where skirmishes occurred, seeking to understand the events that shaped the land. Many report leaving the field with a mix of awe and discomfort, a feeling that they have brushed against history in its rawest, most unfiltered form. The haunting experiences, whether seen as spiritual remnants or psychological echoes of tragedy, deepen the appreciation of the human stories embedded in the landscape. Paxton's Field serves as a reminder that even the lesser-known battlefields of America carry profound weight. Figures in uniform, cries for help, and unseen touches remind us that the past is never truly gone. The spirits of those who lived and died on these fields seem determined to make their presence known, leaving an indelible impression on anyone who walks among the grass and trees. For those who visit, the field offers not only a connection to history, but an encounter with the enduring mysteries of life, death, and memory. Even as daylight fades and shadows stretch across the open grass, the field maintains its watchful presence. The wind whispers through the trees, carrying with it faint echoes of the past. And the sensation of unseen eyes remains, a constant reminder of the lives once lived and lost in this Pennsylvania battlefield. Paxton's Field is not merely a patch of land. It is a living testament to the enduring power of memory, history, and the spirits who refuse to be forgotten. Those who traverse it tread carefully, aware that the field does not easily relinquish its secrets, and that the echoes of its dark past continue to resonate century after century. Fort Pitt Blockhouse in Pittsburgh stands as a remarkable relic of early American history, its weathered timbers and stone foundation bearing silent witness to centuries of conflict, settlement, and change. As the oldest surviving structure in the city, it has endured the chaos of frontier warfare, the expansion of a young nation, and the bustling growth of modern Pittsburgh around it. Yet beneath its historical significance lies a persistent legend that Fort Pitt is not merely a museum of the past, but a site haunted by the echoes of battle, where ghostly soldiers still patrol the grounds and the memories of war refuse to rest. Constructed in the mid-18th century as part of the fortifications built during the French and Indian War, the blockhouse served as a defensive stronghold and lookout post. Its strategic location at the confluence of the Allegheny and Monongahela rivers made it a critical point for controlling trade and movement in the region. During its active years, Fort Pitt witnessed multiple skirmishes, sieges, and the constant tension of frontier life. Soldiers stationed there endured harsh winters, attacks from opposing forces, and the constant anxiety of defending the fort against threats both near and distant. The blockhouse, while small in scale, was central to the survival and protection of early Pittsburgh settlers, and it became a focal point of both fear and determination. It is perhaps the intensity of these historical conflicts that has left the strongest imprint on the blockhouse, creating what many believe to be a lingering spiritual presence. Many claim that the spirits of soldiers still patrol the grounds, marching silently across the wooden floors or standing guard by the old ramparts. These apparitions often appear in uniform, with faded coats, hats, and weapons that mark them as soldiers of the 18th century. Witnesses describe the figures as partially transparent, yet their presence is undeniable, a reminder that the blockhouse was once alive with human activity, fear, and duty. Auditory phenomena are among the most compelling aspects of the Fort Pitt Blockhouse's haunted reputation. Visitors have reported hearing distant murmurs of orders, the clash of metal, and the low hum of coordinated military activity. Some claim to hear commands being shouted, voices carrying across empty rooms, as if the fort is replaying scenes from a long-forgotten skirmish. These spectral sounds often occur at night or during quiet periods, heightening the sense of isolation and allowing the imagination to bridge past and present. One frequent description involves hearing the echo of soldiers' boots against the wooden floors, seemingly pacing a routine patrol that has persisted for centuries. Visual phenomena also contribute to the blockhouse's eerie atmosphere. Some visitors have seen flashes of light resembling distant artillery fire or the glow of a musket discharge, illuminating the interior in brief, sudden bursts. Others report seeing figures stepping in and out of doorways or appearing at windows, their forms dissolving as quickly as they manifest. One observer described witnessing a soldier standing near the fort's original cannon, seemingly readying it, only to vanish before any interaction could occur. These sightings are often accompanied by sudden drops in temperature, a cold that seems concentrated around specific areas, such as stairwells, corners, or sections of the outer walls. Even the land surrounding the blockhouse carries the weight of its past. These artifacts, combined with persistent reports of ghostly activity, create a sense that the blockhouse is a living monument not only to historical events but also to the people who experience them firsthand. Visitors frequently remark that the energy of the place is different from other historic sites. They feel an intensity, a raw connection to life and death, duty and fear, that transcends mere architecture or historical reenactment. Local historians have long been aware of the blockhouse's haunted reputation. Accounts passed down through generations include stories of guards who never left their posts, of soldiers who perished during sieges, and of unexplained phenomena experienced by caretakers and visitors alike. One caretaker recalled hearing the distant ring of a bell, long since removed, signaling a warning that no longer existed, yet appearing as if the fort were still active. Another reported seeing a line of soldiers materialize on the ramparts, marching silently before fading into the night. Such stories suggest that the spirits are tied to duty and memory, bound to the blockhouse, not by malice, but by the imprint of their historical purpose. Paranormal investigations have attempted to document these phenomena. Audio recordings often capture faint voices, commands, or footsteps, while temperature sensors detect sudden, localized cold spots. Cameras and motion detectors occasionally record movements or anomalies that defy logical explanation, while skeptics propose natural causes, settling of the building, wind through cracks, or the power of suggestion, the cumulative weight of testimonies. Visual evidence and atmospheric phenomena continues to intrigue both historians and ghost enthusiasts. Despite, or perhaps because of, its spectral residence, the Fort Pitt Blockhouse remains a site of fascination for the public. Visitors come not only to explore its historical significance, but to experience the palpable sense of living history. Many leave with a mixture of awe and unease, aware that the blockhouse is more than a static structure. The spirits of soldiers, the whispers of orders, and the occasional flashes of phantom artillery make the past immediate, tangible, and unforgettable. At night, when the city around it falls silent, the blockhouse retains its vigil. The wooden floors creak under invisible weight, shadows move just beyond clear sight, and the air carries the faint scent of gunpowder and smoke, as if the echoes of battle are replaying for anyone attuned enough to notice. Fort Pitt Blockhouse is more than the oldest structure in Pittsburgh. It is a monument to memory, conflict, and the enduring presence of those who once called it their stronghold. Visitors tread carefully, aware that the past is never truly gone, and that the spirits of Fort Pitt remain as vigilant as the soldiers who built it centuries ago. Braddock's Field, located in North Braddock, Pennsylvania, is a site steeped in history, tragedy, and lingering legend. Though its name is primarily associated with General Edward Braddock's ill-fated expedition during the French and Indian War, the land itself carries echoes that reach far beyond textbooks. The field, now quiet and unassuming in its urban surroundings, once witnessed one of the most devastating defeats for the British in North America. Yet today, long after the battles have ended and the smoke of muskets has faded, the field remains a place where history and the supernatural converge. The events at Braddock's Field in 1755 were catastrophic. General Braddock, leading British regulars and colonial militias toward Fort Duquesne, was ambushed by a combined force of French troops and native allies. The engagement was sudden, chaotic, and merciless. Soldiers fell in the open fields, many without the chance to defend themselves, their bodies strewn across the terrain as cries of command and pain echoed through the forests. Braddock himself was mortally wounded, and his defeat left a mark not only on the course of the war, but also on the land where so many lives were lost. The scale of the violence, combined with the fear and confusion experienced by those present, has, according to local lore, left an enduring spiritual imprint on the field. Visitors to Braddock's Field often describe a palpable sense of tension upon entering the area. Even on calm days, a subtle unease pervades the open grass, as though unseen eyes are tracking every movement. Many report sudden chills that seem to arise from nowhere, a cold that is not carried by the wind but instead seems to emanate from the earth itself. These sensations are sometimes accompanied by an inexplicable heaviness, a pressure that hangs in the air as if the land remembers the chaos and fear of battle. Some individuals report feeling brushes of cold air along their arms, or the fleeting touch of unseen hands. Reinforcing the sense that the field is more than a historical relic, it is a place alive with lingering energy. The most common phenomena reported are visual in nature. Shadows are often seen moving across the open terrain, figures dressed in the tattered uniforms of mid-18th century soldiers, appearing as if marching silently or crouching among the trees. Witnesses describe these apparitions as both distinct and ephemeral. Soldiers may be clearly visible for a few moments, carrying muskets or dragging equipment, only to vanish when approached. One hiker reported seeing a line of soldiers emerge along a ridge at dusk, their formation precise, their movements deliberate, and then dissolve into the fog as if they had never been there. Others have seen single figures standing solemnly at the edge of the field, staring into the distance, then fading before they can be identified. Auditory experiences are equally haunting. Many visitors recount hearing the distant crack of gunfire, the clatter of musket balls, and the shouts of commands or cries of pain. These sounds often arise in the stillness of night or early morning, when the field is otherwise silent. Some claim that the noises echo directly around them, moving from one side of the field to the other, mimicking the chaos of the original ambush. Others have reported hearing more subtle sounds, such as the shuffle of boots across grass, or the rustle of leaves, as though unseen soldiers are maneuvering in formation. The suddenness of these noises, combined with their historical authenticity, often leaves witnesses unsettled and convinced that the past is reaching out to the present. Eerie lights have also been reported over Braddock's Field at night. These are described as faint glows hovering above the grass or between the trees, often moving in ways that mimic the motion of soldiers on patrol or the flash of distant artillery. Some visitors have described seeing what appears to be the reflection of a musket's flash in the darkness, a brief and sudden illumination that vanishes before anyone can fully grasp it. Others report seeing small orbs of light, sometimes lining the paths where troops might have advanced or retreating in patterns reminiscent of battlefield maneuvers. These visual phenomena, paired with the shadows and sounds, create an immersive sense of historical reenactment that is impossible to ignore. Physical evidence of the past occasionally complements these paranormal experiences. Over the years, excavations and studies of the field have uncovered musket balls, fragments of uniform buttons, and other artifacts from the mid-18th century. These remnants of war, combined with the persistent reports of ghostly activity, create a landscape that feels simultaneously grounded in history and alive with lingering energy. Some visitors claim to sense changes in the terrain, areas where the grass seems unnaturally flattened or worn, as if unseen feet are treading the paths soldiers once walked. Others report that their electronic devices malfunction or behave strangely in certain spots, further reinforcing the idea that the field is a place where normal rules do not always apply. Local lore and generational storytelling have helped keep Braddock's Field's haunted reputation alive. Elders in the community recount tales of children who ran screaming from shadows on the field, of hikers startled by the sudden appearance of ghostly figures, and of strange sounds that seem to echo long after visitors have left. Some families claim that ancestors who fought or lived near the battlefield continue to warn of the spirits, ensuring that newcomers treat the land with respect and caution. Paranormal investigators have visited the field repeatedly, recording audio anomalies, temperature fluctuations, and occasional unexplained visual phenomena. While skeptics point to natural explanations, such as wind, wildlife, or psychological suggestion, the consistency and specificity of the reports continue to intrigue both researchers and enthusiasts. Braddock's Field today is a place of reflection, history, and unsettling fascination. Walking the open grass, one cannot escape the sense that the field has absorbed centuries of human emotion, fear, courage, despair, and determination. The field is a quiet but persistent testament to the power of memory and the lingering presence of those who perished on its soil. At dusk, when the shadows grow long and the wind stirs through the grass, the ghosts of Braddock's Field seem most alive. Figures march silently in formation, distant musket fire echoes faintly across the terrain, and spectral lights shimmer in patterns that evoke the chaos of battle. For those who tread its paths with care and curiosity, the field offers a glimpse into a past that refuses to rest. A haunting reminder that history can be both lived and witnessed. Centuries after the last shot was fired, Katanning Battlefield, located in Armstrong County, Pennsylvania, is a site where history and the supernatural seem to intertwine. Known primarily for the 18th century conflict during the French and Indian War, the battlefield marks the location of a pivotal attack on the Native American village of Katanning by colonial forces. Today, visitors frequently report phenomena that defy conventional explanation: ghostly figures in period attire, the echo of long-forgotten battle cries, and sudden cold spots that chill even on warm days. The original attack on Katanning in 1756 was a coordinated assault by colonial militia, led by Lieutenant Colonel John Armstrong, against a Lenape village believed to be a base for raids on frontier settlements. The attack was swift and brutal. Homes were burned, and many villagers were killed or captured. Contemporary accounts describe the chaos, the crackle of flames, the shouts of combatants, and the desperate cries of those caught in the crossfire. Though the colonial forces succeeded in their mission, the cost was steep, and the violence left a permanent mark on the land. Those who walk the grassy expanse of Katanning Battlefield often describe a sense of unease upon entering. Unlike other historic sites, where the presence of history feels abstract or distant, Katanning seems to exert a tangible influence on visitors. Many report a sudden heaviness in the air, as if the land itself is pressing down. The wind may rise unexpectedly, carrying the faint scent of smoke or gunpowder. Hikers and history enthusiasts frequently mention a sudden drop in temperature in localized areas, cold spots that seem to appear with no natural cause. Some have described the sensation of being brushed by unseen hands, or the faint pressure of a presence just behind them, as though the spirits of those who died here are aware of every step taken across the battlefield. Visual phenomena are perhaps the most startling. Witnesses have reported seeing shadowy figures moving across the fields, often dressed in 18th century attire that aligns with the period of the skirmish. These apparitions sometimes appear in formation, as though mimicking the tactics of battle, while others are lone figures standing silently near the edges of the tree line. One visitor recounted seeing a man in colonial uniform pacing along the edge of a burned clearing, his figure flickering as if caught between this world and the next. Others have described ghostly figures carrying torches, illuminating areas where homes once stood, only to vanish moments later. Some interpretations suggest that these are residual echoes, imprinted memories of the violence that played out on the land. Auditory experiences add another layer to the haunting atmosphere. Visitors report hearing faint cries and calls for help, shouts of command, or the distant boom of musket fire. These sounds are often sudden and startling, appearing in moments of silence when the field seems otherwise calm. Some have described hearing multiple layers of sound, as though different segments of the battle are overlapping in time. A lone traveler recounted hearing the cries of women and children, their voices blending with the commands of soldiers, creating a chilling, almost cinematic replay of events long past. The auditory echoes, combined with visual sightings, create an immersive sense of history that feels immediate and unsettling. In addition to the cold spots and apparitions, Katanning Battlefield has been the site of reports of phantom fires. Witnesses describe flickering flames in locations corresponding to the burned homes and structures of the original village. These fires are often brief, glowing faintly before disappearing without smoke or heat. Some observers claim that the fires appear at the edges of their vision, visible only when they are not looking directly at them, contributing to the impression of a landscape caught between past and present. The combination of light, shadow, and sound leaves many with a profound sense that the battlefield is more than a historical marker. It is a living, breathing memory. The land itself seems to carry the weight of history. Visitors note depressions and irregularities in the fields, areas where grass seems flattened as though by invisible feet. Archaeological studies have uncovered remnants of musket balls, fragments of pottery, and other artifacts. grounding the spectral experiences in tangible evidence of the past. Locals maintain stories of children and adults encountering sudden chills, hearing inexplicable footsteps, or glimpsing shadowy forms that vanish when approached. These stories have been passed down through generations, reinforcing the perception that Katanning Battlefield is a site of lingering unrest. Paranormal researchers have documented a variety of phenomena at the site. Electronic voice recordings sometimes capture faint commands or cries. Temperature sensors record abrupt, localized drops, and cameras occasionally pick up movements or orbs that cannot be attributed to wind, animals, or light anomalies. While skeptics point to natural explanations, drafts, optical illusions, or psychological expectation, the consistency of reports from multiple sources and across decades suggests something more enigmatic. The field seems to retain a presence, a memory of those who once lived and died there, and their echoes continue to touch those who enter. Katanning Battlefield is now a place of reflection, study, and eerie fascination. Historians visit to understand the events that shaped Armstrong County and the larger frontier, while paranormal enthusiasts seek evidence of the lingering spirits. Many who step onto the field leave with a mix of awe and unease. Sensing that they have walked through more than grass and soil, they have walked through the weight of history itself. The ghostly figures, phantom fires, echoes of battle cries, and sudden chills serve as reminders that the past is not entirely gone, and that the land remembers even centuries later. At night, when shadows stretch across the open fields and the wind rustles the tall grass, the presence of the fallen seems most acute. Figures in period clothing may appear along the tree line. Spectral fires may flare briefly where structures once stood, and the distant echoes of musket fire and anguished cries seem to play on repeat. Katanning Battlefield is not only a record of history, it is a haunting, a lingering testament to the lives lost and the tragedies endured. Those who traverse it do so with reverence, aware that the spirits of the past remain, watching and echoing across the fields where history unfolded in blood and fire. Wyoming Valley Battlefield, located in Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, is a site steeped in history, tragedy, and lingering legend. The battlefield was the scene of one of the Revolutionary War's most harrowing conflicts, the Battle of Wyoming, fought on July 3, 1778. Patriot militia forces faced British Loyalists and allied Iroquois warriors in a brutal clash that left scores dead and the valley itself scarred by violence. The battle's aftermath was so devastating that local lore has preserved its memory not only in history books but in stories of lingering spirits, spectral sightings, and unexplained phenomena that continue to haunt the land centuries later. The battle erupted as a retaliatory strike against colonial settlers who had encroached upon Iroquois lands and opposed British control. The militia, composed largely of local men with limited military experience, marched into the valley with hope and determination. They were met by a superior force of Loyalist soldiers and Iroquois warriors who used the terrain and surprise to devastating effect. Eyewitness accounts describe chaos, men cut down in open fields, homes set ablaze, and the screams of those caught in the crossfire echoing across the hills. The massacre that followed left hundreds dead and the survivors traumatized, creating a legacy of horror that would be passed down through generations. Visitors to Wyoming Valley today often describe a palpable sense of unease. Upon entering the site, the open fields and rolling hills, now quiet and green, seem to vibrate with a tension that is difficult to explain. Many report sudden drops in temperature, cold spots that appear in patches along the ground, often following them as they walk. The sensation is described as more than a simple breeze. It is a chill that sinks deep into the bones, a lingering reminder of the suffering once endured on the land. Hikers and history enthusiasts alike have reported feeling watched, as if unseen eyes are tracking every movement. And some even describe the sensation of being lightly touched by unseen hands. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at Wyoming Valley Battlefield is the appearance of spectral figures. Witnesses describe men in 18th century attire, marching in formation across the mist-laden fields. These figures often appear at dawn or in the late evening when fog rises from the river and the surrounding hills. Observers report seeing soldiers advancing with muskets slung over their shoulders, their movements deliberate and eerily silent. Others have seen isolated figures standing near tree lines, staring out over the valley as though surveying the terrain for an enemy that no longer exists. The apparitions are often fleeting, vanishing when approached or when sunlight pierces the mist, yet the impressions they leave are lasting. Auditory phenomena are equally striking. Visitors frequently report hearing phantom cries of battle shouts of command, musket fire, and anguished screams that seem to come from nowhere. These sounds are often reported in areas where the original skirmishes occurred, as if the land itself is replaying the tragic events for those attuned to its history. Some describe hearing multiple layers of sound, the combination of marching, shouting, and combat, creating an overwhelming sense of being in the middle of a battle that occurred centuries ago. Even those who arrive at the site with a healthy skepticism often admit to feeling a sense of dread or unease as these noises unfold around them. Visual anomalies are not limited to ghostly figures. Some witnesses report seeing unexplained lights hovering over the valley, flickering in ways that mimic the glow of torches or fires. These lights often appear in clusters, tracing paths through the fields where homes and defensive positions once stood. Others have seen the shimmer of figures in motion, so faint that they seem almost like reflections or distortions of the mist. The combination of visual and auditory phenomena creates a fully immersive experience for those who traverse the battlefield, allowing them to feel as though they have stepped into the past. Physical traces of the battle are still present across the landscape. Archaeologists and local historians have uncovered remnants of musket balls, uniform buttons, and other artifacts buried in the fields. These tangible remnants serve as a reminder that the haunting experiences reported by visitors are tied to real human suffering and historical events. Many visitors report that the areas where these artifacts are found seem to have the most intense paranormal activity, suggesting a connection between the material remnants of conflict and the lingering presence of those who died there. Generational storytelling has kept the battlefield's haunted reputation alive. Local families recount tales of children who wandered too close to the misty fields, only to return pale and trembling, claiming to have seen soldiers marching or heard cries calling their names. Elders speak of unexplained noises at night and strange shadows that appear along the riverbanks. These stories, passed down for centuries, reinforce the idea that the Wyoming Valley is more than a historical site. It is a living testament to the tragedies that unfolded there, and a place where the past refuses to remain buried. Paranormal investigations over the years have recorded a variety of phenomena. Audio equipment sometimes captures faint voices, commands, or cries that cannot be explained. Temperature sensors detect abrupt drops in localized areas, and cameras occasionally capture anomalies that defy conventional explanation. While skeptics suggest wind, mist, or psychological expectation may account for some experiences, the consistency and specificity of the reports from multiple sources indicate that something more profound lingers on the battlefield. Today, Wyoming Valley Battlefield serves as both a historical site and a place of contemplation. Visitors come to learn about the Revolutionary War and the tragic loss of life. But many leave with an awareness of something far less tangible, yet equally powerful. The spectral figures, phantom cries, and unexplained cold spots remind all who tread the valley that the past is not gone, and that the memory of the fallen remains alive. Walking the fields, one can sense the weight of history pressing down, a subtle but unmistakable presence that connects the living to the dead. At dusk, when the mist rises and the light fades over the valley, the haunting seems most vivid. Figures in period attire may march silently through the fog. Ghostly cries echo across the fields, and cold spots cling to those who wander. Wyoming Valley Battlefield is not only a site of historical significance, it's a place where the tragedies of the Revolutionary War are kept alive. A haunting reminder that the past continues to speak to those who will listen. The spirits of the fallen remain, a solemn and persistent presence across the misty fields of Luzerne County. Brandywine Mills, nestled in Chester County, Pennsylvania, is a site where history and legend intertwine, leaving a lingering sense of unease that has captured the imagination of visitors for generations. Though the Brandywine area is widely recognized for the Battle of Brandywine during the Revolutionary War, less attention is often given to the mills that once operated nearby. These mills, which were vital to the local economy and supported both the civilian population and military efforts, became unwitting witnesses to the chaos and destruction that accompanied the conflict. Today, the ruins of these mills are said to be haunted, with shadowy figures, phantom footsteps, and whispered recountings of past tragedies marking the landscape with the echoes of history. During the Revolutionary War, the Brandywine region was a focal point of strategic importance. Control of the mills and surrounding infrastructure was essential for both the British forces and the American militia. Historical accounts describe soldiers moving through the area, raiding and seizing supplies, and sometimes using the mills themselves for temporary encampments or storage of provisions. Civilians, caught in the middle of these military maneuvers, suffered greatly. Homes were looted, mills were damaged or destroyed, and those who tried to remain neutral often found themselves trapped amid violence. It is from this combination of military action and civilian suffering that the first stories of lingering spirits began to emerge. Visitors to Brandywine Mills frequently report an immediate sense of unease upon approaching the ruins. Even on bright, calm days, the air seems heavier, as though the ground itself remembers the fear and violence that once transpired. Some describe sudden chills that creep along the spine or the feeling of being watched, with no living presence in sight. Hikers, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts alike have noted phantom touches, the sensation of unseen hands brushing past them as they move through the crumbling stone foundations. These experiences are often accompanied by the unmistakable sensation that the mills are alive with memory, the very walls retaining the echoes of human suffering and conflict. Shadowy figures are the most commonly reported visual phenomena. Witnesses describe fleeting shapes moving among the ruins, often appearing as blurred silhouettes that resemble workers or soldiers from the 18th century. Some observers report seeing figures carrying tools or small bundles, as though performing the tasks they once did in life, while others see soldiers moving cautiously through the rubble, keeping watch as if expecting an attack. One visitor recounted seeing a faint outline of a man standing atop the remnants of a water wheel, gazing silently across the landscape before disappearing into the morning fog. These apparitions are often indistinct, yet the impression of presence is powerful and difficult to dismiss. Auditory phenomena add another layer to the haunting atmosphere. Phantom footsteps echo across the stone floors and wooden beams, sometimes following visitors as they explore the area. Whispers are also frequently reported, voices that seem to recount small details of daily life, commands, or cries of distress. Some say the voices are almost conversational, fragments of conversations from decades or even centuries ago, repeating over and over as if the ruins are trapped in a loop of memory. The auditory experiences are often subtle, easily dismissed at first, yet persistent enough to leave a lasting impression on those who encounter them. The ruins themselves seem to amplify the sense of the past. Crumbling walls, moss-covered stones, and partially collapsed structures suggest both the passage of time and the lingering trauma of destruction. Some areas are more active than others, with visitors reporting the most intense experiences near collapsed beams, the remnants of storage rooms, or the edges of the mill race. Small artifacts occasionally surface in these areas, such as fragments of tools, rusted nails, or broken pottery, further connecting the physical remains of the mills to the spectral phenomena reported. It is as if the ground remembers both the everyday lives of those who worked there and the extraordinary violence that interrupted them. Local legends and oral histories reinforce the mill's haunted reputation. Residents have long shared stories of children who ran screaming from the ruins, claiming to have seen workers and soldiers moving through the walls, or heard voices calling their names. Farmers recount tools disappearing or shifting inexplicably when left near the ruins, and some report seeing lights flickering at dusk in areas that have been unoccupied for centuries. These tales, passed down through generations, create a narrative in which the Brandywine Mills are not only a historical site, but a place where the past persists in a tangible and often unsettling way. Paranormal investigations of the Brandywine Mills have yielded intriguing results. Audio recordings have captured faint whispers and footsteps that appear to have no physical source, while temperature readings often drop abruptly in localized areas. Cameras occasionally record anomalies, blurred shapes, fleeting shadows, or faint orbs of light that cannot be easily explained by natural causes, while skeptics suggest that wind, wildlife, or structural settling might account for some experiences. The consistency of reports over decades indicates a phenomenon that is difficult to attribute to coincidence alone. Despite its reputation for the supernatural, Brandywine Mills remains a site of fascination and reflection. Visitors come to explore the ruins, to learn about the Revolutionary War and the lives disrupted by it, and to experience the eerie atmosphere that pervades the area. The ghostly figures, phantom footsteps, and whispers recounting the tragedies that occurred remind all who visit that history is not merely recorded in books. It is embedded in the land, in its ruins, and in the lingering presence of those who once lived and labored there. At twilight, when the shadows lengthen and the valley grows quiet, the haunting seems most pronounced. Shapes may move silently across the rubble, voices whisper along the walls, and sudden chills ripple through the open spaces. Brandywine Mills is more than a relic of the past. It is a place where the echoes of history and tragedy persist, a living testament to human endurance, suffering, and memory. For those who walk carefully among its ruins, the mills offer a glimpse of a past that refuses to remain silent. A haunting presence that continues to watch, whisper, and remind the living of the lives that were forever altered by the conflicts of their time. Fort Duquesne, located in present-day Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, occupies a site rich in history and steeped in legend. Originally constructed by the French in 1754 at the confluence of the Allegheny and Monongahela rivers, the fort was a strategic stronghold during the French and Indian War. It witnessed intense conflict as British forces sought to claim control of the Ohio Valley. Over the centuries, Fort Duquesne has earned a reputation for paranormal activity, with reports of ghostly apparitions, phantom gunfire, and shadowy figures appearing on the surrounding hills. Some visitors claim to see spectral soldiers performing drills or disappearing when approached, creating an eerie link between history and the present. The French and Indian War brought intense military action to the region. Fort Duquesne was the site of frequent skirmishes, ambushes, and battles as British and French forces, along with their respective Native American allies, vied for dominance. Accounts from the time describe the chaos of sudden attacks, the echo of musket fire through dense forests, and the terror of soldiers and settlers caught in the crossfire. Many lives were lost during these confrontations, and the bloodshed is said to have left a lasting imprint on the land. The fort itself was eventually abandoned and destroyed in 1758 as British forces advanced. Yet reports of lingering spirits suggest that the site retains a presence beyond its physical structures. Visitors to the Fort Duquesne site often report an immediate sense of unease. The rolling hills and riverbanks, quiet and seemingly peaceful during the day, take on an otherworldly quality as shadows lengthen and fog drifts through the area. Cold gusts of wind appear without explanation, brushing across the skin and intensifying the feeling that the site is alive with unseen activity. Hikers, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts alike speak of a weight in the air, a sense of being observed by unseen eyes as they traverse the landscape. Many describe the sensation of unseen forces lingering nearby, brushing past or hovering just out of reach. Ghostly soldiers are among the most frequently observed phenomena at Fort Duquesne. Witnesses report seeing men in 18th century uniforms moving along the hills or near the original fort site. These figures often march in formation, perform drills, or pause as if guarding the terrain, only to vanish when approached. Some observers describe soldiers crouched behind tree lines, reloading muskets, or carrying out other routine actions as though trapped in a continuous loop of their final moments. One visitor recounted seeing a line of soldiers advance along a ridge at dawn, their forms translucent yet unmistakable, before fading silently into the mist. Auditory phenomena accompany these visual encounters. Phantom gunfire, the crack of rifles, and distant shouting are commonly reported by visitors. Some hear commands shouted in English or French, the sound of footsteps along the hills, or anguished cries carried faintly across the landscape. These sounds often correlate with areas where historical conflicts occurred, creating the impression that the battlefield itself is replaying events from centuries past. In some cases, the layering of sound, marching, gunfire, and shouts produces an almost immersive experience, making the past feel present to those exploring the site. Shadows and unexplained lights further contribute to the eerie atmosphere. Visitors describe shapes moving along the hills or disappearing into the fog, while occasional flickering lights appear in locations where no natural source exists. Some suggest these lights mimic lanterns carried by soldiers, tracing paths once taken during the fort's active years. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena creates a sense of continuity with the past, reinforcing the feeling that the site remains occupied by those who once fought and died there. Historical artifacts at the Fort Duquesne site lend further weight to these experiences. Musket balls, fragments of uniform buttons, and other remnants have been uncovered in areas corresponding to reported paranormal activity. These discoveries serve as tangible links to the past, connecting visitors to the events and people whose presence seems to linger. The fort's history, combined with its spectral reputation, ensures that visitors approach the site with both curiosity and respect. Local lore preserves the haunted reputation of Fort Duquesne. Generational stories describe travelers startled by ghostly soldiers, hikers hearing phantom musket fire, and lights appearing in the mist. Paranormal investigations have documented unexplained sounds, sudden temperature drops, and shadowy figures in photographs, reinforcing eyewitness accounts. Even skeptics frequently report a sense of tension, unease, or being watched while exploring the hills near the fort, acknowledging that the area has a palpable energy that is difficult to explain. Today, the Fort Duquesne site remains a destination for both history enthusiasts and those drawn to the paranormal. Visitors come to study the French and Indian War, reflect on the lives of soldiers, and experience the lingering presence that inhabits the landscape. At dawn or in foggy conditions, the ghostly figures, phantom gunfire, and shadowy shapes are most pronounced, creating an immersive experience where the past feels extraordinarily close. Fort Duquesne stands as a testament to history, sacrifice, and the enduring memory of those who fought there, a place where echoes of battle continue to manifest in ways that are both haunting and unforgettable. Easton Satterfield, located in Northampton County, Pennsylvania, is a site where history seems to linger in the air, and the echoes of the past are said to manifest in both subtle and startling ways. Known for its role during the Revolutionary War, the battlefield witnessed numerous skirmishes between colonial militia and British forces, leaving a legacy of courage, conflict, and tragedy. Though much of the land has since been cultivated or developed, portions of the battlefield remain open fields and wooded areas where visitors report strange and unexplained phenomena. Those who tread these grounds speak of ghostly soldiers, phantom marching, sudden chills, and shadows that vanish when approached, suggesting that the events of centuries ago continue to reverberate across the landscape. During the Revolutionary War, Easton served as a strategic hub due to its proximity to the Delaware River and its network of roads connecting surrounding towns. The area saw repeated military activity as both American and British forces sought to control the region, leading to frequent clashes, raids, and troop movements. Soldiers of varying experience and allegiance traversed the fields, sometimes engaging in fierce combat under conditions of extreme stress and uncertainty. The historical accounts are filled with tales of courage, fear, and loss, with casualties including both militia and local civilians who found themselves caught between opposing forces. The intensity of these events left a lasting mark, one that many believe continues to influence the land today. Visitors often describe an immediate sense of tension upon entering the preserved portions of Eastern Battlefield. Even on calm days, the air can feel heavy, charged with an energy that is difficult to define. Some report sudden cold gusts of wind that seem to sweep across the open fields without explanation, chilling them despite warm weather. Hikers, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts alike recount the sensation of being followed or observed, with fleeting touches or the brush of unseen hands intensifying the feeling that the battlefield is far from empty. These experiences create an impression that the land itself retains the memory of the conflict, carrying the emotional weight of those who once fought, suffered, and died there. The most commonly reported visual phenomenon is the appearance of soldiers in period dress. Witnesses describe men wearing colonial militia uniforms, sometimes advancing in formation or performing drills across the fields. These apparitions are often observed in the early morning fog or late evening shadows, adding to the surreal quality of the experience. Some visitors report seeing single soldiers standing guard along ridges or tree lines, muskets in hand, scanning the horizon as if awaiting orders or the approach of enemy forces. The figures are often described as partially transparent, flickering in and out of sight, yet their presence feels unmistakably real. One visitor recounted seeing a line of soldiers marching in formation across the grass, only to watch them dissolve like mist when approached, leaving an unsettling emptiness in their wake. Auditory phenomena accompany these visual sightings. Phantom marching steps that echo across the fields without a source is frequently reported. Visitors describe hearing the rhythmic clatter of boots on earth, commands shouted in the distance, and even the clash of weapons as if a skirmish were unfolding just beyond perception. Occasionally, whispers are reported, voices calling out names or orders, fragmented and unintelligible, yet unmistakably human. These sounds often occur in areas corresponding to historical troop movements, creating a sense that the land is replaying its own history for those sensitive enough to notice. Some witnesses have described the layering of sounds as though multiple events from different moments in time are overlapping, producing a disorienting and immersive experience. Shadows are another recurring phenomenon at Eastern Battlefield. Visitors frequently report seeing figures flit across the fields or along tree lines, visible only peripherally and disappearing when looked at directly. Some of these shadows appear to be soldiers, while others resemble civilians who may have been caught in the chaos of battle. The movement is often subtle, a flicker at the edge of vision, yet it leaves a lasting impression. Combined with the cold gusts, phantom sounds, and ghostly figures, these shadows contribute to the perception that Eastern Battlefield is more than a static historical site, is a landscape, alive with the memory of the past. Physical remnants of the conflict still enhance the eerie atmosphere. Artifacts recovered from the site include musket balls, fragments of uniform buttons, and other items associated with 18th century military activity. These tangible objects ground the spectral experiences in history, linking the apparitions and sounds to real people who lived and died on the land. Visitors often note that areas with higher concentrations of artifacts are also hotspots for paranormal activity, suggesting a connection between the material remnants of war and the lingering presence of those who perished. Local folklore and generational storytelling have helped preserve Eastern Battlefield's haunted reputation. Residents recount tales of children who fled the fields in terror after glimpsing soldiers in the distance or hearing marching when no one was near. Elders speak of strange winds, sudden chills, and fleeting shadows that appear along the tree line at dusk. These stories, passed down through generations, reinforce the perception that the battlefield is more than a historical site. It's a place where the past remains tangible, a space where memory and presence converge. Paranormal investigators have visited Eastern Battlefield repeatedly, documenting a variety of phenomena. Audio equipment has captured faint footsteps and whispers. Temperature sensors record abrupt, localized drops, and cameras occasionally pick up shapes that cannot be attributed to natural causes, while skeptics point to environmental factors or psychological expectation. The consistency of these reports over decades indicates that something more enigmatic may linger in the fields. Today, Easton Satterfield serves as a place of reflection, education, and fascination. Visitors come to learn about the Revolutionary War and the strategic significance of the area, but many leave with an awareness of something intangible yet powerful. The spectral soldiers, phantom marching, cold gusts, and shifting shadows remind those who walk the fields that the past is never entirely gone. The land retains its memory, echoing the lives, fears, and courage of those who once stood upon it. As dusk falls over the valley, the haunting seems most pronounced. Soldiers may appear marching silently across the grass. Whispers drift through the air, and shadows flicker along the horizon. Easton Battlefield is more than a site of historical importance. It is a living testament to the sacrifices and tragedies of the Revolutionary War. Visitors tread carefully, aware that the spirits of the past continue to watch, echoing across the empty fields and reminding all who walk there that history, in its deepest sense, never truly dies. The Paly Massacre site in Malvern, Pennsylvania, is a place where history and haunting collide, leaving a lingering sense of fear and sorrow that persists centuries after the event itself. The site is infamous for the events of September 20th, 1777, when British forces, under the command of General Charles Grey, launched a surprise night attack on General Anthony Wayne's Continental Army encampment. What became known as the Paly Massacre resulted in brutal close-quarters killings and left many American soldiers dead or wounded in the darkness. The violence and chaos of that night are said to have left an indelible imprint on the land. And over the years, numerous reports of ghostly activity have confirmed the site's haunted reputation. Visitors frequently describe piercing screams, shadowy figures along the roads, and phantom reenactments of the massacre that appear most vividly on misty evenings. The Paly Massacre was a defining and devastating moment in the Revolutionary War. Wayne's troops were resting after a series of engagements, unaware that British forces were preparing to strike under the cover of darkness. Using stealth and surprise, the British forces infiltrated the encampment and attacked without warning, wielding bayonets and muskets with lethal efficiency. Eyewitness accounts tell of chaos, screams of soldiers cut down in their sleep, and the struggle to escape the confined camp. The attack was merciless, leaving a lasting scar not only on the American forces, but also on the landscape itself. The brutality of the massacre and the suddenness of the assault created a trauma that, according to local legend, has never fully left the land. Visitors approaching the site often report a tangible sense of unease, even before stepping onto the ground. The roads and fields around Malvern carry a palpable tension, a heaviness that seems to press down on anyone who enters. Many speak of sudden chills that snake along the spine or rush across the body, cold gusts that have no logical source. Hikers, history enthusiasts, and paranormal investigators have recounted feeling an invisible presence following them. Unseen hands brushing against clothing or shoulders, and an overwhelming sense that the past is aware of their intrusion. The experience is disorienting yet compelling, leaving visitors with a deep awareness of the site's violent history. Shadowy figures are among the most commonly reported phenomena at the Paly Massacre site. Witnesses describe fleeting forms moving along the edges of the roads or appearing among the trees that border the fields. Often, these figures resemble soldiers in 18th century uniforms, carrying muskets or wielding weapons as though engaged in the events of that fateful night. Some have reported seeing groups of soldiers advancing silently across the road, bayonets glinting faintly in the moonlight, only to vanish when approached or illuminated by a flashlight. Others describe lone figures, standing motionless along the path or near the encampment ruins, their presence felt more than seen, before disappearing into the mist. The apparitions are often transient, yet their presence is unmistakable and chilling. Auditory phenomena are equally haunting. Visitors frequently report hearing screams that pierce the night, cries for help, and the clatter of combat long past. Some describe hearing the shuffle of feet, commands shouted in urgent tones, and the clash of blades as though the massacre is being replayed for anyone attuned to the land's memory. These sounds often appear in the stillness of early morning or late evening, when the surrounding roads and fields are otherwise quiet. On misty nights, the auditory experiences intensify, creating a chilling sense of immersion, as though the battle is unfolding anew, layer upon layer, over the quiet countryside. Visual phenomena are often paired with these auditory experiences. Some visitors report faint glows along the road, like lanterns carried by unseen soldiers, tracing paths that correspond with troop movements from the original attack. Shadows sometimes move independently of any natural light, flickering at the edge of vision and vanishing when directly observed. Others describe witnessing ghostly reenactments of the massacre itself, figures engaging in combat or fleeing across the fields in a silent, spectral loop, replaying the terror and confusion that characterized that night. These manifestations are often described as fragmented and fleeting, yet they leave a lasting impression on anyone who witnesses them. Physical evidence of the battle remains scattered across the landscape. Archaeological surveys have uncovered musket balls, fragments of uniform buttons, and other artifacts linked to the Continental Army encampment. Many visitors note that areas with higher concentrations of artifacts seem to correspond with zones of heightened paranormal activity, suggesting a connection between the tangible remnants of conflict and the spectral phenomena. The ground itself seems to retain the memory of violence, resonating with the fear, courage, and despair of those who perished. Local lore reinforces the site's haunted reputation. Residents tell stories of travelers startled by figures appearing along the roads, children frightened by unexplained noises, and mysterious lights flickering in the mist. Generational accounts emphasize the idea that the Pali Massacre site is more than a historical landmark. It is a place where the past refuses to remain silent. Oral histories, eyewitness testimonies, and repeated paranormal investigations over decades all point to the persistent presence of those who fell in. 1777. Paranormal researchers visiting the site have recorded a range of unexplained phenomena. Audio devices sometimes capture faint screams, whispered commands, or the sound of running feet, while temperature sensors record sudden localized drops. Cameras occasionally capture blurred figures or shadowy forms that defy natural explanation. Even skeptics often admit to feeling an oppressive atmosphere, sudden chills, or a sense of being observed when exploring the grounds. These consistent reports reinforce the belief that the Pali Massacre site remains haunted by the events of that fateful night. Today, the site serves as both a historical landmark and a place of eerie fascination. Visitors come to study the Revolutionary War, reflect on the human cost of conflict, and explore the lingering presence that seems woven into the fields and roads. The screams, ghostly figures, and spectral reenactments are reminders that the past is never fully gone, and that the echoes of violence can persist across centuries. At night, particularly on misty evenings, the haunting is said to be most vivid. Figures may move silently along the roads, the screams of soldiers may pierce the quiet, and ghostly reenactments unfold before the eyes of those who dare to witness them. The Pali Massacre site is more than a testament to historical events. It is a living memory of courage, fear, and tragedy. Visitors tread carefully, aware that the land itself bears witness to the past, and that the spirits of those who fell continue to watch, echo, and remind the living of the cost of war. Red Hill Battlefield, located in Lebanon County, Pennsylvania, is a site where history, tragedy, and legend converge, leaving a lingering presence that many describe as eerie and unsettling. The battlefield, though not as widely known as other Revolutionary War sites, was the scene of intense skirmishes and confrontations that left a mark on both the land and the people who fought there. Over time, stories of lingering spirits, spectral soldiers, phantom cries, and unexplained lights have solidified Red Hill's reputation as a haunted landscape. Visitors consistently report experiences that suggest the memories of the fallen remain deeply embedded in the terrain, making the battlefield a place where the past feels remarkably present. The history of Red Hill Battlefield is rooted in the Revolutionary War, during a period of fierce territorial conflict and military maneuvering in central Pennsylvania. Militia and Continental Army forces moved through the region to counter Loyalist and British advances, often clashing with opposing forces in open fields and along wooded ridges. Reports from the time describe the chaos of sudden attacks, the clash of weapons, and the desperate attempts of soldiers to hold positions or retreat to safer ground. Civilians in a surrounding area were sometimes caught in the crossfire, leaving stories of suffering and tragedy that contributed to the area's dark reputation. These historical events created a backdrop for the paranormal activity that has been observed in the centuries since. Visitors approaching the battlefield often describe an immediate sense of unease. Even on bright, sunny days, the air feels heavy, as if the ground itself is carrying the weight of past bloodshed. Sudden gusts of cold wind appear without warning, chilling the bones and intensifying the impression that the land is imbued with memory. Hikers, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts frequently report feeling the presence of unseen forces pressing down, a sensation that is both physical and psychological. Many describe the eerie feeling that the soil itself remembers the fallen, that the land has absorbed the fear, desperation, and courage of those who once fought there. Spectral soldiers are among the most frequently reported phenomena. Witnesses describe figures dressed in Revolutionary War uniforms, moving across the fields, marching in formation, or standing at attention along ridges. These figures are often partially transparent, flickering in and out of view. Yet they carry an unmistakable sense of purpose and intent. Some observers recount seeing soldiers advancing with muskets slung over their shoulders, while others report lone figures standing silently as if guarding the battlefield. One visitor described a line of soldiers emerging from the trees in the early morning mist, moving in perfect synchrony before fading into the underbrush, leaving only a sense of solemnity behind. Auditory experiences amplify the haunting at Red Hill Battlefield. Phantom cries, shouts, and commands are often reported, carried on the wind as though the events of the past are being replayed for those sensitive enough to notice. Some witnesses hear the rhythmic clatter of marching boots, the snap of gunfire, or anguished screams echoing across the fields. These sounds frequently appear in areas corresponding to historical troop movements, suggesting a connection between the land's history and the present-day phenomena. The layering of sounds, marching, shouting, musket fire, can create the impression that multiple moments in time are overlapping, producing a surreal and disorienting experience for visitors. Unexplained lights are another feature of Red Hill's haunted reputation. Witnesses report glowing or flickering lights moving across the fields or hovering near tree lines, often in locations where no natural source is present. Some suggest these lights mimic lanterns carried by soldiers, tracing paths that correspond to historical movements, while others describe small, flickering glows that appear to mark the locations of skirmishes or fallen soldiers. These lights often vanish when approached, leaving visitors with the impression that they are glimpsing echoes of the past, momentary windows into events long gone. The battlefield itself contributes to the sense of haunting. Rolling fields, wooded ridges, and depressions in the landscape give the terrain an atmospheric quality that enhances the supernatural reports. Visitors note areas where the grass seems flattened, where shadows appear unusually long or distorted, and where the mist clings more densely than in surrounding areas. These features, combined with the historical knowledge of the battle and its casualties, create an environment that is both compelling and unsettling. Archaeological finds, including musket balls, fragments of military uniform buttons, and other artifacts, reinforce the connection between past and present, grounding paranormal reports in tangible evidence of historical conflict. Local legend and generational storytelling have preserved Red Hill Battlefield's haunted reputation. Residents recount stories of children frightened by figures appearing in the mist, travelers startled by sudden cold gusts or cries in the wind, and unexplained lights that appear along the fields at dusk. These accounts, passed down through generations, suggest that the site is not only a historical landmark, but also a living testament to the lives, lost and the tragedies endured there. Paranormal investigations have documented a range of phenomena, including audio anomalies, sudden temperature drops, and photographic evidence of shadowy figures or lights that defy conventional explanation. Today, Red Hill Battlefield attracts visitors seeking both historical insight and paranormal experiences. Historians explore the site to understand the events of the Revolutionary War, while ghost hunters and enthusiasts come to experience the lingering presence that seems woven into the land. Witnesses report that the most intense experiences often occur at dawn or dusk, when mist rises from the fields and shadows lengthen across the ridges. Spectral soldiers may march silently, phantom cries may echo through the trees, and lights may flicker in locations where battles once raged. Red Hill Battlefield is more than a historical site. It is a place where the past remains tangible, a landscape that remembers the courage, fear, and sacrifice of those who fought there. Visitors walk with a sense of reverence and caution, aware that the land holds memories that have not faded. The spectral soldiers, cries in the wind, unexplained lights, and the feeling of unseen forces pressing down all serve as reminders that history is not only recorded in books but also etched into the very soil. On misty evenings, the haunting is most pronounced, and the battlefield seems to awaken, replaying fragments of the past for those who are willing to witness it. Red Hill remains a solemn testament to the enduring presence of history, memory, and the spirits of the fallen. Monongahela Battlefield, located in Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania, is a historic site where the echoes of the past seem to linger in every ridge, tree, and foggy hollow. The battlefield is best known for its role during the French and Indian War, particularly the disastrous expedition of British General Edward Braddock in 1755. Braddock's forces, consisting of British regulars and colonial militia, advanced toward Fort Duquesne with the goal of securing control over the Ohio Valley. However, they were ambushed by a combined force of French troops and Native American allies, resulting in one of the most catastrophic defeats for British forces in North America. The intensity of the battle, the chaos of the ambush, and the countless lives lost have left a lingering presence on the landscape, and many visitors today report ghostly figures, phantom musket fire, and shadowy shapes that emerge from the morning mist. The battlefield's terrain played a crucial role in the outcome of the conflict. Dense forests, rolling ridges, and narrow valleys made traditional military formations nearly impossible, leaving Braddock's troops vulnerable to sudden attacks. Eyewitness accounts from the time describe confusion, screams, and the relentless sound of musket fire cutting through the trees. Soldiers fell rapidly, and the retreat was chaotic, with many left behind in the wooded ravines. The brutality and panic of that day are said to have imprinted themselves on the land, creating a site where the energy of loss and struggle can still be felt. Visitors approaching Monongahela Battlefield often sense an immediate change in the air. The ridges and open fields, serene in appearance, carry a weight that is difficult to ignore. Cold gusts of wind appear without warning, brushing against skin as if invisible hands are moving through the trees. Hikers, history enthusiasts, and paranormal investigators alike describe a growing sensation of oppression the further they walk. A heaviness that presses down on their shoulders and fills the quiet spaces between the trees. Even during warm weather, the battlefield can feel chilling, and many report the instinctive urge to move quickly through certain areas. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at Monongahela Battlefield is the presence of ghostly figures. Visitors describe soldiers in 18th-century uniforms marching along the ridges, sometimes moving in formation or appearing as lone figures surveying the terrain. These apparitions are often faint and partially transparent, yet their movements are deliberate, as if the soldiers are trapped in the moments of their final engagement. One witness recounted seeing a line of red-coated British soldiers advancing cautiously through the trees, only to vanish suddenly when approached. Others report glimpses of colonial militia crouched behind natural cover, musket in hand, repeating drills or defensive maneuvers from centuries past. Auditory phenomena enhance the haunting atmosphere of the battlefield. Phantom musket fire, the clash of steel, shouted commands, and anguished cries are commonly reported. Some visitors hear marching boots on leaf-covered trails, the shuffle of soldiers moving through underbrush, or the faint sound of voices calling for aid. These sounds often seem to emanate from areas of historical engagement, as if the battlefield itself is replaying fragments of the conflict for those who listen closely. On foggy mornings, or in the dim light of dusk, the combination of sound and shadow creates a sensation that the events of 1755 are unfolding once more. Visual anomalies extend beyond ghostly soldiers. Shadows move across the ridges and through the trees, often at the edge of perception, and sudden flashes of light, resembling musket glints or campfires, have been reported. Observers often describe the feeling of being followed or watched, with shapes appearing to flit from ridge to ridge, disappearing as they are looked at directly. These manifestations create an immersive experience that blends history with the supernatural. The battlefield also retains a physical connection to its violent past. Archaeological surveys have uncovered musket balls, uniform fragments, and other remnants scattered across the ridges and valleys. Visitors often notice that areas rich in artifacts correspond to zones where paranormal activity is reported, suggesting a tangible link between historical events and lingering spectral impressions. These findings serve as reminders that the land is not just a backdrop to history, but a participant in the memories it holds. Local lore reinforces the haunted reputation of Monongahela battlefield. Stories passed down through generations describe travelers startled by ghostly soldiers, hikers hearing phantom musket fire, and a general feeling of unease that intensifies in the fog. Paranormal investigations have documented unexplained sounds, sudden cold spots, and shadowy figures captured on camera, providing additional evidence to support eyewitness reports. Even skeptics often concede that the battlefield carries a palpable energy, particularly along the ridges and wooded areas where combat was fiercest. Today, Monongahela battlefield serves as both a historical landmark and a place of haunting fascination. Visitors come to study the French and Indian War, reflect on the bravery and tragedy of those who fought, and experience the lingering presence that inhabits the ridges and forests. Ghostly figures march silently, musket fire echoes faintly through the trees, and shadowy forms appear in the fog, creating the impression that the battlefield's story continues to unfold. The oppressive sensation that grows heavier with each step serves as a solemn reminder that the sacrifices made here are not forgotten, and that the echoes of battle remain etched into the very land itself. Brandywine Crossing, located in Chester County, Pennsylvania, is a historic battlefield where the echoes of the past seem to linger long after the guns fell silent. The site is most famous for the Battle of Brandywine, fought on September 11, 1777, during the Revolutionary War, when General George Washington's forces faced British troops in a decisive engagement that shaped the course of the war. Though the battle ended in an American retreat, the intensity of the fighting and the heavy losses left an indelible mark on the land. Over the years, the battlefield has gained a reputation for paranormal activity. Visitors report cold drafts that appear without warning, whispers carried on the wind, and shadows gliding across the open fields. Some even claim to see spectral horses and soldiers reenacting their final movements. Caught in a perpetual loop of history and tragedy, the Battle of Brandywine was a complex and chaotic engagement. Washington's army, though brave and determined, was outmaneuvered by British forces under General Sir William Howe. The British executed a flanking maneuver that forced the American troops into a desperate defense along the Brandywine Creek. Historical accounts describe hand-to-hand combat, musket volleys, and the collapse of the American lines as soldiers were driven back across the rolling fields. Casualties were high, with hundreds of soldiers killed, wounded, or captured. The ferocity of the battle and the suddenness of the British victory left a psychological and physical imprint on the land, an imprint that many believe remains visible to those who walk the battlefield today. Visitors to Brandywine Crossing frequently report a distinct sense of unease even before dark. The rolling hills and open fields, quiet during the day, take on a different character as the sun sets, Cold drafts sweep across the terrain, chilling the skin and carrying the sensation of something unseen passing nearby. Hikers, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts describe an oppressive weight in the air. A heaviness that seems to press down as if the ground itself retains the memory of suffering. The effect is cumulative. The longer one remains on the battlefield, the more palpable the sense of presence becomes, making even the bravest visitor feel the gravity of the past. Shadowy figures are among the most commonly reported phenomena at Brandywine Crossing. Witnesses describe soldiers in 18th-century uniforms moving across the fields, sometimes advancing in formation or crouching behind natural cover as though engaged in combat. These apparitions often appear at dusk or in early morning mist, their outlines fleeting but unmistakable. One visitor reported seeing a lone soldier kneeling to reload his musket, pausing to survey the battlefield, and then disappearing as if swallowed by the air itself. Others recount glimpses of multiple figures moving silently across the fields, their movements deliberate, almost ritualistic, echoing the motions they may have repeated in life during the battle. Spectral horses are another striking phenomenon. Witnesses describe ghostly mounts galloping across the fields, sometimes with riders silhouetted against fading light. The horses appear as transparent forms, their hooves making no sound, yet the sense of motion and urgency is unmistakable. Riders, often clad in period uniforms, seem to be participating in the chaos of battle, their movements frozen in the final moments of combat. Some observers have described seeing cavalry charges replayed in miniature across the fields, with soldiers and horses repeating the same patterns over and over, trapped in the final moments of the September engagement. Auditory phenomena are equally vivid at Brandywine Crossing. Visitors frequently report hearing distant musket fire, the crack of rifles, and the shouts of orders carried faintly on the wind. Whispers are often reported, fragmented phrases that seem to float across the fields or through the trees bordering the terrain. Some recount hearing commands in both English and colonial dialects, or the anguished cries of soldiers calling out for comrades. These sounds often occur without any visible source, creating the impression that the battlefield itself is replaying the events of the past for those who are attentive enough to hear. Visual and auditory experiences often occur together. On misty evenings, shadows glide across the fields while distant sounds of combat echo through the air. Lantern-like glows appear intermittently, as if soldiers are carrying torches, only to vanish when approached. Some visitors describe seeing figures crouched behind rocks or fallen logs, poised as they were during combat, while the sounds of their phantom muskets crack in synchronization with movements across the terrain. The effect is immersive, creating a sensation that one is walking through history itself, observing the final actions of those who fought and died there. Artifacts and remnants of the battle add to the haunting atmosphere. Musket balls, fragments of uniform buttons, and other military items have been uncovered in various areas, serving as tangible connections to the past. Visitors often note that areas rich in historical remnants correspond with reported paranormal activity, suggesting a link between the physical traces of history and the lingering spectral presence. The combination of artifact, legend, and personal experience reinforces the perception that the battlefield continues to hold memory, energy, and perhaps the spirits of those who perished. Local lore has long preserved the haunted reputation of Brandywine Crossing. Generational stories tell of travelers startled by shadowy soldiers, hikers frightened by ghostly horses galloping through the mist, and nighttime visitors hearing phantom commands or screams across the fields. Paranormal investigations have recorded audio anomalies, sudden temperature drops, and photographic evidence of unexplained figures, lending credibility to the many eyewitness reports. Even skeptics admit to feeling the oppressive atmosphere and the sensation of being watched when walking the battlefield, especially after dusk. Today, Brandywine Crossing serves as both a historical site and a place of eerie fascination. Visitors come to study the Revolutionary War, to honor the courage of those who fought, and to experience the lingering presence that seems to inhabit the fields and ridges. As night falls, the chilling combination of cold drafts, whispered voices, shadowy figures, and spectral horses creates a vivid sense that the past is not gone. Soldiers repeat their final actions. The ground seems to carry their memory, and the air itself vibrates with the echoes of conflict. Brandywine Crossing is more than a historical landmark. It is a living testament to sacrifice, struggle, and the persistence of memory. Visitors tread carefully, aware that the battlefield continues to hold presence, sound, and shadow. The haunting becomes most pronounced on misty evenings, when the fog rolls across the fields and the silhouettes of soldiers and horses appear as if trapped in the last moments of a historic battle. Here, history is alive, watching and reminding all who walk its paths that the past never truly dies. Germantown Ridge, located on the outskirts of Philadelphia, is a site where the echoes of the past refuse to fade, leaving a palpable sense of history and haunting lingering across the landscape. The ridge played a significant role during the Revolutionary War, particularly in the Battle of Germantown on October 4, 1777, when General George Washington's Continental Army attempted a bold assault against British forces occupying the town. The battle was marked by confusion, smoke, and intense close-quarters combat, resulting in heavy casualties on both sides. Even today, the ridge and surrounding fields seem to carry the weight of that bloodshed, and visitors frequently report ghostly figures pacing the landscape, phantom cries drifting on the wind, and cold spots that appear without explanation. The area feels alive with the memories of those who fought and fell, making Germantown Ridge one of Philadelphia's most haunted historic locations. The Battle of Germantown was an ambitious and chaotic engagement. Washington's plan involved a coordinated attack from multiple directions, but dense fog and miscommunication led to confusion among the troops. Soldiers often stumbled into one another or into enemy lines, and fierce fighting broke out in narrow streets, open fields, and wooded ridges that dotted the area. Historical accounts describe smoke-filled landscapes, musket fire flashing through the mist, and cries of wounded men carried across the fields. The intensity and disorder of the battle left a lasting impression, and locals of the time recorded vivid memories of the carnage. The combination of tragedy, fear, and heroism is said to have left an energy on the ridge that continues to manifest for modern visitors. Approaching Germantown Ridge, many report an immediate sense of unease. Even during calm weather, the air can feel heavy, charged with an almost tangible tension. Cold gusts sweep across the open fields and tree-lined ridges, leaving visitors shivering even in mild conditions. Hikers, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts alike describe an oppressive sensation, as if the land itself is aware of their presence and weighs on them with its history. Some report the brush of invisible hands or the sudden feeling of being watched. Sensations that intensify the longer one remains on the ridge. The psychological and physical impact of these experiences often convinces visitors that the area is far from empty. Ghostly figures are among the most frequently reported phenomena on Germantown Ridge. Witnesses describe soldiers in 18th century Continental Army or British uniforms, sometimes moving deliberately across the fields or pacing along the tree line. These figures often appear in the early morning fog or at dusk, their outlines faint and flickering, yet unmistakably human. One visitor recounted seeing a soldier kneeling to reload a musket, then standing to fire, repeating the same motion as if caught in an eternal loop. Others described multiple figures marching silently across the ridge, disappearing when approached, or blending seamlessly into the mist. These sightings are usually transient but leave a strong and lingering impression. Auditory phenomena are similarly chilling. Phantom cries, the distant crack of musket fire, and shouted commands are frequently reported by those exploring the ridge. Some hear the shuffle of marching boots, the clash of weapons, or the anguished groans of wounded soldiers. The fog often amplifies these sounds, carrying them across fields and ridges in a way that makes it difficult to discern their origin. Visitors describe these auditory experiences as vivid and disorienting, adding to the feeling that the events of the past are playing out invisibly around them. Cold spots and sudden temperature changes further enhance the eerie atmosphere. Even on warm days, visitors report patches of frigid air that seem to form spontaneously, often in areas associated with historical combat or heavy casualties. These cold spots are sometimes accompanied by feelings of dread, weight, or an inexplicable awareness of the soldier's presence. The combination of temperature shifts, ghostly figures, and auditory phenomena creates a fully immersive experience, compelling many to tread cautiously along the ridge. Visual phenomena extend beyond the ghostly soldiers themselves. Shadows often flit along the periphery of vision, moving across the fields or among trees, disappearing when looked at directly. On foggy mornings, some visitors report seeing spectral formations resembling troop movements, lantern-like glows hovering in the distance, or figures pausing on hilltops as if surveying the terrain. These fleeting glimpses create the impression that the land itself is replaying moments of the battle, a silent reenactment only perceptible to those attentive to its presence. Artifacts and historical remnants further anchor the ridge in its violent past. Musket balls, fragments of uniform buttons, and other material evidence have been found across the ridge and nearby fields. Visitors often note that areas with higher concentrations of artifacts correspond with heightened paranormal activity, suggesting a link between tangible remnants of battle and the lingering spiritual impressions reported by witnesses. These findings reinforce the sense that Germantown Ridge is not only a historical site but a repository of memory and energy, holding the weight of events that occurred centuries ago. Local folklore and oral histories preserve the haunted reputation of Germantown Ridge. Generational stories describe travelers startled by ghostly soldiers appearing in the mist, hikers hearing phantom cries or musket fire, and sudden cold spots that chill the spine. Paranormal investigations have documented unexplained sounds, temperature anomalies, and shadowy figures, adding credibility to the multitude of eyewitness reports. Even skeptics often report feeling the oppressive atmosphere and an unsettling sense of being watched while on the ridge, acknowledging the power of its lingering presence. Today, Germantown Ridge serves as both a historical landmark and a site of eerie fascination. Visitors come to study the Revolutionary War, reflect on the courage and sacrifice of soldiers, and experience the lingering presence that inhabits the fields and ridges. On foggy mornings, and in the dim light of dusk, the ridge seems most alive. Ghostly soldiers may pace silently, phantom cries carry across the fields, and shadows glide through the mist, creating the impression that history is unfolding once more. Germantown Ridge is more than a battlefield. It is a living memory of courage, conflict, and sacrifice. Visitors tread carefully, aware that the land itself remembers the past, and that the spirits of those who fell continue to haunt the foggy fields. The cold drafts, whispers in the wind, shadowy figures, and the sense of presence make the ridge a place where history and the supernatural converge, reminding all who walk there that the echoes of bloodshed never truly fade. Fort Ligonier, located in Ligonier, Pennsylvania, is a site where history, architecture, and tragedy intersect, creating an atmosphere thick with both legacy and lingering spirits. Established in 1758 during the French and Indian War, the fort served as a strategic outpost for British forces advancing through the Ohio Valley. Its walls witnessed the tension of encampments, the clatter of supplies being moved, and the terror of skirmishes fought nearby. Over the centuries, Fort Ligonier has earned a reputation as one of Pennsylvania's most haunted military sites, with visitors reporting shadowy apparitions along the walls, phantom cannon fire echoing through the night, and ghostly footsteps tracing the fort's perimeter. The lingering presence of soldiers lost in early American conflicts seems to infuse the grounds, offering a glimpse into the fear, courage, and tragedy that once defined life at the fort. The history of Fort Ligonier is tightly bound to the French and Indian War, a conflict that shaped the early colonies and left countless lives altered or extinguished. The fort was constructed to defend British supply lines and maintain strategic advantage in the contested Ohio Valley region. Soldiers stationed there lived in constant anticipation of attack, maintaining drills, patrolling the perimeter, and keeping watch over the surrounding forests and hills. While the fort itself was never fully besieged, skirmishes erupted nearby, and soldiers faced the dangers of disease, harsh weather, and the psychological strain of war. The intensity of life at the fort, combined with the deaths of those stationed there, is said to have left a residual imprint on the walls and grounds, a presence that modern visitors occasionally witness in unsettling ways. Visitors approaching Fort Ligonier often describe an immediate sensation of unease. Even in the daytime, the stone walls and timbered structures seem to exude a quiet vigilance, as if the fort itself is observing those who tread its paths. Cold drafts sweep unexpectedly through corridors and along ramparts, often in areas with no natural source of wind. Hikers, history enthusiasts, and paranormal investigators report a sense of pressure, as if the weight of history is pressing down on their shoulders, paired with an inexplicable feeling that someone or something is following their movements. The fort's architecture, with its enclosed spaces, lookout posts, and shadowed corners, contributes to the intensity of these experiences, amplifying both sound and sensation. Shadowy apparitions are the most commonly reported phenomena at Fort Ligonier. Witnesses describe figures resembling British soldiers in 18th century uniform, moving along the walls, standing at sentry posts, or patrolling the grounds. Some apparitions appear partially transparent, flickering as they pace along the ramparts, while others are more solid in form, their presence unmistakable to those nearby. One visitor recounted seeing a soldier pause at a corner, lean on his musket, and then vanish without a trace. Others report seeing multiple figures walking in formation, performing the routines of military drills as if caught between time and eternity. These manifestations often appear at dusk or during foggy conditions, when light and shadow combine to enhance the spectral presence. Auditory experiences further heighten the haunting atmosphere. Phantom cannon fire, distant musket volleys, and the clash of bayonets are frequently reported by visitors exploring the grounds. Some hear footsteps echoing across the stone floors, or the shuffle of boots along the wooden ramparts, even when the fort is otherwise empty. Whispered commands, faint conversations, and the occasional anguished cry carry through the corridors and open areas, adding an auditory dimension to the visual manifestations. On quiet nights, the layering of sound footsteps, weapon fire, shouts can create the impression that the fort is once again active, replaying its past with startling realism. Visual anomalies extend beyond the shadowy soldiers. Lights that resemble lanterns sometimes appear along the ramparts or in the open courtyard, flickering and moving as though carried by invisible hands. Shadows may stretch unnaturally across walls, taking forms that suggest soldiers in motion or objects from the 18th century. Some visitors report glimpses of figures standing atop lookout posts, silhouetted against the moon, only to vanish when directly observed. The combination of fog, architectural angles, and historical resonance produces a sensory experience that is at once disorienting and compelling. Physical remnants of the fort's history anchor these spectral accounts in reality. Artifacts such as musket balls, uniform buttons, and fragments of period tools have been uncovered during excavations and preservation efforts. Visitors often note that areas rich in historical remnants correspond with zones of reported paranormal activity, suggesting a connection between tangible history and lingering presences. These findings provide a bridge between the documented history of Fort Ligonier and the experiences of those who feel the fort is still alive with the echoes of its past. Local lore and oral histories reinforce the fort's haunted reputation. Generational accounts describe travelers startled by figures appearing along the walls, hikers hearing phantom cannon fire, and caretakers encountering unexplained footsteps in empty corridors. Paranormal investigators have documented audio anomalies, sudden temperature drops, and photographic evidence of shadowy figures, lending credence to eyewitness reports. Even skeptics frequently acknowledge an oppressive atmosphere that grows heavier as one moves through certain areas of the fort, particularly the ramparts and watchtowers, which seem to be favored by spectral activity. Fort Ligonier today serves both as a historical site and a destination for those drawn to the supernatural. Visitors come to study the French and Indian War, explore the reconstructed fort, and reflect on the lives of soldiers who endured its hardships. As dusk falls, the chilling combination of ghostly figures, phantom cannon fire, and unseen footsteps intensifies. Shadows glide along the walls, whispers echo across courtyards, and the fort's architecture seems to amplify the presence of the past. The experience is immersive, providing a unique window into the lives and lingering spirits of those who once walked the fort's grounds. Fort Ligonier is more than a preserved military site. It is a testament to sacrifice, history, and the persistence of memory. Visitors tread carefully along the walls and ramparts, aware that the fort continues to hold echoes of its past. The shadowy apparitions, phantom cannon fire, ghostly footsteps, and sudden cold drafts serve as constant reminders that the spirits of soldiers lost in early American conflicts may still roam the fort, watching, pacing, and enacting the routines that bound them to life centuries ago. The fort remains alive with memory, offering a haunting experience where history and the supernatural converge. And there you have it, 25 haunted battlefields in Pennsylvania, where the cries of the fallen echo through the mist. Shadows march endlessly, and the weight of history presses heavily upon the living. These battlefields remind us that some pain never fades, and some spirits refuse to rest. If this journey into Pennsylvania's haunted battlegrounds sent shivers down your spine, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another ghostly tale. Until next time, tread carefully among these fields, because some echoes of war never truly die, and some cries still haunt the living.